My name's Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Legendary comics creator in the house, man. The great Rob Liefeld. Jim, rattle off some of the titles.
New Mutants is when I found him first. I was on board from the very beginning and might not be sitting here if it weren't for this man.
X-Force, Youngblood, Prophet, all sorts of stuff, man. Rob, thanks for being here today, dude.
You guys, I'm so excited. This is so great. You guys are killing it. I love you guys. You know I love you guys. We go back. So I dig it. I dig it.
Off the top real quick, man, let's talk about you got a couple things out in the wild, man. Robservations, the podcast.
Yeah.
That is freaking awesome. This is something I always wanted, man. I grew up wanting the Rob Liefeld memoirs. We have it in audio form, the audiobook format, and also a Snake Eyes miniseries, man.
Yeah. Well, you know what, guys? Again, it's great to hang out with you. Let me tell you about Robservations, and I'll tell you in a nutshell. It was born of the pandemic. I have about 3 people I talk to in my life regularly. That's really it. Not outside of my family. And during the pandemic, you don't have a whole lot to talk to people when they're all in lockdown. Nobody's out experiencing life. So literally, I was like my conversations with these people were getting shorter and shorter, and eventually I'm in like complete isolation of my own making. Like, holy crap, I'm lonely as shit. So what do? I get a Yeti mic, baby, and I start talking to it because this is my friend and I can talk to him, and I upload him and I talk to people. Can I make this a podcast? And they're like, yeah. And I mean, honestly, this saved my life. This was my deliverance from complete isolation. I mean, literally, and I'm sure you guys have each other, which is great. But I mean, so many people that I interact with, when everything shuts down, life gets a lot slower, more boring, and you don't have as much to interact with. So the great thing is, Ed and Jim, this podcasting kind of, I thought about it for years, and I finally was driven to it by loneliness. So I'm glad you're enjoying my lonely thoughts as I talk to myself and upload it to the cloud, right? But so I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, it's I don't know anything about it. People ask me about it. I literally am just loading the pod. I think I'll check on how it's doing in a year. I just want to continue to make these kind of, like you said, an oral history of my relationship with comics. I hate saying collecting in titles like money or some kind of value. The value is in the memories and the feelings, right, that you get from them. Like people always give me crap. I think I just turned my camera and you can see my spinner rack. And dude, you can tell a person when they come in. Kids come in and pull the comics off my spinner rack and they interact with them. And that's what they're there for. Then there are these people who go, what are you doing? Why aren't these in bags and boards? I'm like, hey, dude, newsflash. When these comics were coming out, there were no bags and boards. Okay. I'm old. Okay. I bought comics in the 70s, which frequently sounds like when someone said to me, I grew up in the 30s. Like, I'm old. I'm like dirt. So that's how comics were consumed. So thank you. I'm enjoying the podcast. Hope you guys are enjoying it. Snake Eyes is kind of a fulfillment of a childhood dream. I'm just glad that I'm able to draw G.I. Joe before I die. Because here's the deal. Everything I'm doing now, I feel like I don't have much time to do good work. There are guys who I used to dig, and they still do some work, and it looks bad. It looks like their eyes have been compromised, maybe their hand, their focus. And you wonder when it's going to hit you. When is it going to take you? When is my stuff going to look compromised? And I put it under a lot of different levels of scrutiny. And I go, I still think this is good, but I mean, like I'm telling you, like I was telling my kids the other day, I'm like, this is what Dad did today. Dad measured all these eyes to make sure they weren't crooked. Okay, that's a bitch, right? I mean, roadblocks eyes can't be crooked, and you got to sit there and go, because when you get older, you just can't. That stuff you have to take more, attention, because I've watched. I am haunted by the guys who I loved growing up, and who their work looks compromised. And look, we all saw. I'm going to be honest. I love Jack Kirby. His prime is some of my favorite stuff. But when he was doing Superpowers in 1985, he was more compromised. The work wasn't as strong, the wobbly hand. He would talk about it too, but it didn't stop him. And on one note, the guy from my era who's still kicking ass is Walter Simonson. That guy, you go, his threshold is the highest of anybody that I grew up with. There is no slippage. I go, this dude still renders like a mofo. He completely attacks the page. The structure is sound. The faces are great. His storytelling is on point. And I know people don't really like where Frank Miller's art has gone, but I freaking love it. Oh my God. I think it's like I absolutely love where his work is at. So I would say Frank and Walt are still performing. Walt looks the same that he did in the 80s to me. There's been no slippage. Where Frank has changed dramatically, but he's altered. It's like Michael Jordan altering his game because his athleticism is gone. Frank has altered his game, maybe because of eyes or health issues. But so when I'm doing G.I. Joe, I'm just checking off, okay, bucket list. I've been bucket listing it for about the last 5 years because my kids will tell you I have an obsession with dying. I think I'm dying any minute. And I'm like, there's all this art I've left you for when I'm dead, kids. So I just keep trying to throw it on the pile. You want me to do another cover? Great. Okay, done. Looks good. Kids, here's something else you can sell when I die, but do not sell it until Dad dies. I'm actually surprised they're not trying to spike my Coke and kill me at this point, my own kids. So yeah, now I've come, you're seeing the depth of my paranoia here, okay? So I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to be quiet for a minute.
Rob, that's a great, the bucket list is an interesting thing. Are there other books or characters that are on that bucket list? Other things you'd like to visit at some point?
Yes, there are a group of characters from Archie Comics called the Crusaders, and there's a character called the Shield, another patriotic character. I actually put that out on a tweet, just said, and of course Archie did reach out to me. Now there's been nothing beyond that, but I'm going to tell you, Jim, honestly, stuff that I've had to give over, like it's not going to happen, is a run on OMAC, a run on the New Gods. 2 years ago, I sat next to Jim Lee. He came to my suite at WonderCon. We had a meeting before the show started. I asked him point blank, give me the New Gods. And I was told, you may not have the New Gods. And I'm like, well, that effing sucks. So all that Kirby Fourth World and the Kirby stuff, Commandy, I tried to get Commandy several times over the last 12 years. I think I would bring a lot to the table, but I've been denied, and that's fine. I think you should be honest with when you get turned down. The Fantastic Four, ironically is so what connects all this stuff, but beyond G.I. Joe and the Archie stuff, is Kirby. And then I'm going to tell you, Jim, the Legion of Superheroes is near and dear to my heart. It is one of the most phenomenal franchises, and it is a source of so much inspiration. Nobody knows who Timberwolf is, but there is no Wolverine without Timberwolf. Period. End of story. Dave Cockrum designed Timberwolf, and when Wolverine takes his mask off, Dave Cockrum designed how Logan looks, and there is no doubt that Timberwolf and Wolverine looking alike, is because of Dave Cockrum, who created the looks for both, and then did the Imperial Guard, which is Marvel's Legion. Okay, and that's not even hidden. I have an interview with John Byrne because his first issue, he ties up what Dave Cockrum started with his last issue, which was the X-Men meeting the Imperial Guard. And they are all echoes of the Legion of Superheroes. I have always loved the Legion, and there is about a 5-year run that it is as good as the X-Men or the Titans or anything that was celebrated at the time. And I touch on it in a recent podcast too. It was given 2 books. When you were given 2 books at the time, and they, in the 80s, 2 Legion books a month, 2 Titan books, that means you were trucking, you were making money. But it is phenomenal to me that the Legion doesn't pop anymore. It's not in the culture. You ask people, they're not familiar with it. So that would end my bucket list. But so much of that DC stuff is denied to me because of whatever politics, which is fine. But there are guys at the helm, at the controls, who actively engage in denying people that they have personal beefs with. And my thing is, all I can do is ask. And if I'm denied, that's fine. But in this case, with Snake Eyes and G.I. Joe, you will see in the first issue. I think the first issue, I was like, if I die, because everything is, if I die, at least the first issue had all this. I set it all up, okay? Because I grew up, G.I. Joe was ending when I grew up. I didn't know it. You don't know it when you're collecting a toy figures I was collecting, but there's no intrinsic value, monetary value to that, at least not then. At the toy aisle, the G.I. Joe dolls looked badass, but he wasn't military anymore. Because of the Vietnam War, they had completely shifted G.I. Joe away from military. He was an action adventure hero. And he was the eagle-eyed G.I. Joe, kung fu grip G.I. Joe. And those were the GI Joes. I mean, man, when I'm 7 years old, my GI Joe was right here. I'd carry it to the sandbox. I'd carry it to my room. I'd carry it it'd go in the car with me. And I would build up on those characters. He battled aliens. There was an alien intruder that he battled because no more military. Like I said, they dialed it down, but you don't know when something's dying as you're consuming it. That was their Hail Mary to keep GI Joe going. And then they turned the franchise off. So by 1978, there was no more GI Joe dolls, and they were dolls. Even my dad's like, so you're playing with dolls now? I'm like, crap, this is a doll. Like, God bless the action figure guy who got him down to 6 inches and says, they're action figures. They're action figures. Kids, you're little boys, you're not playing with dolls. Because, man, that hurt when your dad or anyone else or my uncle. So Robbie's playing with dolls? Oh, crap. Because it was a way to demean your toy and make it like a Barbie and you're a sissy, right? This is the 70s. Thanks, uncle. But anyway, the thing is, when G.I. Joe relaunched with the 1983-84 relaunch, the Reagan era, and they bit into that military thing hard, that I was there for that as well. And that was exciting to watch. And it became Marvel's top seller. And I mean, it had cartoons, and the cartoon was selling the comic, and the comic was selling the toys. And so it's just great to have put all that together, because the Eagle Eye Kung Fu Grip G.I. Joe is in my comic.
That's awesome.
He is a key character in my comic. We give him a name. He looks like him. So there was no G.I. Joe comic in the 70s, but they did standalone single page ads that John Romita Sr. drew. And literally it's G.I. Joe in a helicopter. I need to land down there. Suddenly he's in the jungle. Suddenly he's attacked by the alien. He punches the alien, applies the Kung Fu Grip. The alien runs away, and G.I. Joe goes, we'll get him next time. And that's the whole thing, right? But it's by John Romita Sr. They would have great guys draw like Twinkie ads and G.I. Joe ads, right? So I'm like, this guy's going in the comic. So I got Snake Eyes, the most badass, like action figure ever, action character. And look, there is no Snake Eyes. There's no Deadpool without Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes was the first guy that had a katana and a handgun. To me, like, wait, you can have a gun and a sword? And I think we both know I cashed a lot of checks. I took that all the way to the bank. Guns and swords, done. I'm there. You mean your samurai can be a cowboy too? Because in Star Wars, man, it was Han Solo's your cowboy. As a kid, I'm like, okay, he's a cowboy. They're in a cantina. And then Obi-Wan's the East, samurai. We must get our way to Alderaan. And he's like, you're a crazy old wizard. No, he's a samurai, and you're a cowboy, and I get this imagery. And then G.I. Joe goes, we do too. We're smashing it up into one dude. No ninja ever had a pistol before, but now they do. And dude, like I said, I took that all the way to the bank. So getting to the core of it and portraying Snake Eyes, I think you guys are going to see it. I get opinions. I get opinions from people, and I think everybody who I show it to, I can always tell they're like, oh boy, how am I going to break it to Liefeld that this sucks? And then they go, hey, this is great. And I'm like, yes, I don't suck yet. So it's all about me outrunning the suck. I am going to outrun the suck, man. And hopefully when the eyes are droopy and it's not happening for me, I can just go, I'm done. I'll take a break and let you guys catch a breath.
Lot to get into, man, with just that past 10 minutes of recording. One of the things that I wanted to get into, because there's a little bit on the record, but not so much. You touched on lots of fandom stuff here, man. Like you're deep, deep, and you're out there in California, man. Did you, before you got into the game, did you go to that like Sheldorf era San Diego Comic-Con, or were you checking out conventions that would happen in Anaheim? Like, was WonderCon going on before you got into the game?
Such a great freaking question, brother. I'm going to tell you right now, I was absolutely at the Sheldorf Comic-Con. Those are like 83 or 82. One of the two is my first Comic-Con. And I had seen an ad in the comics book buyer's guide. That I am actually telling someone in my family to turn on the air conditioning because I'm burning in here. And here we go. So the thing is, I saw a full page ad in the comic book buyer's guide. And again, the comic book buyer's guide hasn't been around forever, but it was the legitimate comic book newspaper, right? And I had gone to like a couple local creation conventions. That was the chain. They were bringing them out to the Disneyland Hotel, and they would always bring one or two guests. you'd get John Romita Jr., you'd get George Perez. You wouldn't get them both at the same time. And then they'd have some actors from some of the sci-fi shows, V or Battlestar Galactica, right? And I always went to meet and talk to the comic book creators who were always really, well, they weren't all great, but George Perez was great. And he was my favorite. And so when your favorite is great to you, you're so excited. And but this giant ad, Ed and Jim, I mean, so the comic book buyer's guide would come folded like this, you know, but no staples, and you'd open it up, and most of the book was then it's a newspaper. It was a newspaper, and so the ad for the CBG for the San Diego Comic Con is this big, and they have a column of comic book names that run down this page, and I'm going, George Perez, John Byrne, Dave Cockrum, Bill Sienkiewicz, Chris Claremont, Marv Wolf. I mean, everybody. I went and asked my dad. I said, "Hey, Dad, is it possible I could go to this?" And here's the thing: my dad was a Baptist minister who knew that he had a crazy, kooky kid who loved sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, we had to drive several cities away to see Star Wars because he's like, "You can't tell anybody I took you to this." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, it's Star Wars." But you know, that extreme Baptist upbringing, Pastor Paul couldn't be seen at the movie theater taking his kid to some G movie. Woo! Prior to that, he'd taken me. My first movie I saw with my dad was the animated Robin Hood, where Robin Hood is a fox from Disney. That was it. He would take me to a lot of drive-thrus, and now I understand why. The cover of the car and the drive-thru. But Star Wars, man, the drive-thrus were dying out. The theaters were popping up. So he knew that I had a passion, and dude, he saw it and he fostered it. He was always the encourager. My mom, love her to death. She'd be the, are you really going to ever get your head out of one of those comic books and make something of yourself? Awesome. You need that kind of slight, you know, in my documentary, like where Michael Jordan's like, that guy slighted me. That guy slighted. I'm like, my mom slighted me. And I was going to show her. Okay, Mom, I'm going to dunk on you tonight. No, my dad was always the encourager. So he said, son, how about we make a weekend of it? We'll get on the train. We'll go to San Diego because I live in Orange County, and it's about an hour and a half from San Diego by car or by train. And so, dude, we took a train ride, got a hotel room. He would walk me in and then kind of go, all right, do your own thing. This is a time where there was still a lot of hippie culture in the 80s. These guys had long hair and long beards, and who gives a shit? They all look like Leonard Skinner. I mean, the rock and roll music looked the same, right? And they looked like, you know, Styx or Journey or Foreigner or whatever was playing. And my dad is this clean cut, you know, he looks like he stepped out of the 1950s. And I think he'd be like, okay, son, all right, I'm gonna leave you here, but be careful. Like, yeah, because the cartoonists are going to mug me. But they're not a brand of people that he interacted with, these hippie people, right? And so I go there, and again, one of the most fantastic, you know, situations I ever encountered was at the old, and I'm going to tell you guys, the old convention center is still there. When you get off the freeway, if you drive to San Diego Comic-Con, it's still there. You pass it. It's a very definitive looking structure. It used to look so enormous to me, but now obviously I see it through a different lens. But it was big to me at that age. But the facility, you know, they had the two halls. There was only two halls in this building, and then some of the panels were on a building right outside that you would walk across the patio, and they had like a standalone little meeting room, and there were marble panels there up through 1988, 89 that would be in that separate room. But I went in to the main comic book hall because they had like an artist alley in a separate hall. But I walked in and I turned to the left and I wandered because I've never been there, and I see, oh my gosh, there's a row of tables, kind of like a U, about 2 tables going in, then 4 tables across, and then 2 more tables. And you guys, it's Dave Cockrum, it's George Perez, it's Chris Claremont, it's Bill Sienkiewicz, and it's a guy named Paul Smith, who I had never seen his work, and he's about to take over the X-Men, and he tells me all about it right there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the best. And he was like, yeah, I came from animation, man. And he was kind of the most like hipster of the bunch, had the cool hair, had the goatee, where, like I said, all these other guys had they look like Dirty Santa Claus. They look like a bunch of guys who were, you know, auditioning for Santa Claus. And they were all very boisterous. The only grump was John Byrne, who even then I was like, oh man, avoid this guy. His vibe is bad. And you guys got to understand, people, there's documentation of this. There's photos of this. John Byrne would put signs in front of himself that said off duty or, like literally off duty. Right there. He didn't move. He just told you, I'm not speaking to you now. I'm not interacting with you. It's his famous off duty signs or on a break. And you're like, most people get up and leave when they're on a break, but he was a scary guy. George Perez, lovable, affable. Dave Cockrum, lovable, affable. Chris Claremont, I've talked about this. The professor kind of conducting the orchestra because in his mind, all these guys work for him, right? So it was just a great experience. DC and Marvel would have 3, tables and some backdrops. Nothing like the amazing, constructs that they have now. And look, I was there. X-Force #1 came out at the new Comic-Con. It opened. It had 3 halls when it opened. So not, you didn't get to Hall H yet. There was no Hall H. It was ABC. And then a couple years later, D, E, F. They kept adding until they ran out of real estate, as you guys know. But so I was able to go. Once I went with my dad, I made that an annual sojourn. So I went every year after. I never missed I did not miss a Comic-Con since I'm gonna call it 82. I did not miss a Comic-Con. They would let me go on the train with my friend the next year. Then of course I got my license. I started driving. And so, yeah, I mean, you guys, it's been incredible to watch it become what it's become. And, shortly after there, I befriended a guy named Jim Valentino, who was doing indie comics, doing Normal Man. And he was a cool cat. I found out he lived in Orange County. And you guys gotta understand, I had been looking. Dude, I took the phone book and I thought maybe I could find George Perez in my backyard. I would look through Perez, Byrne, because at the time, you don't know John Byrne lives in Canada, right? In 1976, you go, maybe he lives down the street. Is there John Byrne's in my yellow pages? Is there George Perez's, right? So there was no cartoonist. I met nobody in comics in my backyard. And when I finally met Jim Valentino, man, we fell madly in love. And truthfully, he was one of the best mentors I ever had, and gave me so much great guidance, and especially in terms of storytelling, page design, composition. And so we actually ended up sharing a studio in the late 80s where he did Guardians of the Galaxy and I did my annuals, all my Marvel work, and started New Mutants. And the thing is, that was about an hour drive for me every day. And I finally was like, I need to stay closer to home. So it really just broke up out of geography more than, I mean, I love Jim. Those were great times. But I mentioned Jim because he was part of the Comic-Con culture. Like Sheldorf, all those dudes were his buddies. He was part of that kind of indie comic book swell that created that movement. So that's why I invoke him. But yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer. It was such an amazing experience. And again, for me, it's something that I really cherish that I did with my dad. That you guys got to understand, he had no interest in this stuff. Let me go back to Star Wars. As we're walking out, prior to him telling me not to tell anybody, I took him. And it was very kind. He was a very soft-spoken man. I never, ever saw him lose his temper or raise his voice. That is 100%, just absolute fact. But he said, I said, Dad, what'd you like? And I'm swinging an invisible lightsaber on the way to the car, okay? I go, Dad, didn't you love it? And he goes, he unlocks the car door and goes, I like a good drama. And I go, I know that's not called drama. That's called drama, but I like a good drama, son. I'm always down for a good drama. This is more your thing. And between my mom washing the clothes, because I'm like, we don't wash anything, we wash clothes. These Midwestern like accents, because they both came from the Midwest, were like, I like a good drama. So he wanted to let me know, like, we didn't share sci-fi, we didn't share comic books, but he knew that his crazy son needed this outlet and was happy to give it to him. So, whoo, there you go.
Rob, did your dad have a regular church when you were growing up? Did he preach at like the same church? Like,
Yes. For a very long time. I'm going to tell you, it was called Central Baptist Church in Anaheim. I think it's changed names. It's still there. It's nearby all my haunts where I got comic books, the infamous liquor stores. And look, 5 weeks ago on a Sunday afternoon, I fired up my Jeep and I went there and I documented. I took all the pictures. It's all still there, right? Except for the grocery store turned into a gym, which is now completely empty. So that, because there was 4 corners, guys. It's in Anaheim. It's Magnolia and Broadway. I lived on Magnolia. There was a 7-Eleven, a liquor store, a Pizza Hut, and a grocery store. The grocery store is gone. The Pizza Hut is there, the 7-Eleven is there, the liquor store is there. So I'm like, woo, it's just different when you're taking pictures outside and they're like, why is this old man taking pictures of the liquor store, right? Am I going to report him? I'm like, no, man, these are the best memories of my life. But my dad got brain tumors and cancer when I was 9 or 10. So it's 1978. And he got a blood clot and was in a coma for 9 months. And I've told this story. He is in a coma for 9 months. My memories now shift to total darkness and sadness. My mom is crying every day. The doctors, I would go to the hospital. They wouldn't let me see him because he got black and blue because of the infection and the coma. And I just was always sitting in the hospital on the bench when my mom would be walked out by the doctors. And dude, when you hear a doctor say, well, we really recommend you unplug your husband. He's going to be a vegetable. And I tell people, I've said this at my panels, I go, it's something you don't hear anymore. You don't hear anybody say, you're going to be a vegetable, but 70s medical vernacular, your husband will be a vegetable. What the, vegetable. But what comforted me on those trips, my deep relationship with comics was forged in those 15-minute drives to the hospital every day with my mom or my sister. And I have the Avengers with me. I have the X-Men. They are my comfort. They're my best friends. They're getting me through these hard times. And you feel that, man. You feel like that's my escape. I escaped to Marvel's amazing world to completely distract me from, the pain that my family was going through. And the day he came home, they didn't tell me he was coming home. I think they wanted to kind of surprise me. And my sister took me to the 7-Eleven to get comics, and and when we come home, my mom's car's in the parking lot and all my relatives are. And I said to my sister, what's going on? And she says, your dad's home. And I'm like, oh, because like I said, they wouldn't let me see him in the hospital. So I have comic books in my hand when I'm walking in. And then of course I just cry and hug him. But that's comic books to me, man. That is, he went back to the church and but check this out, man. He became like a superhero because half his side of his face became numb from the procedure, never regained his entire, what is this? My left side, his entire left side of his face. And he'd literally say, I can't feel anything. And dude, I would go, can I put that to the test? And I would grab his cheek and I would like almost rip it off. And he'd be like, yeah, I can't feel what you're doing. I can't feel it. And I'm like, holy crap, you're like literally numb, like no pain. So and like a year later, I'd be like, Dad, can I check this? So now I'm like 12, maybe a little immature, but I'm like, can I check this, Dad? Pinch him again. He's like, son, I can't feel this. And he lost his right eye, his left eye, little cable action there. Lost it. They sewed it shut. He had a scar, and he wore dark glasses the rest of his. He and Ed would have been best friends, man. He was rocking the same shades that Ed rocks, and again, so unfortunately, after that. 5 years later, it would come back again. Surgeons were much better. We flew to Chicago. He got a really great surgeon, but that would be like an every 4-year thing with tumors and brain surgeries. And it took him out. He couldn't work after like 1984. And so, then he passed away in 1999 and, had a great life, was a great dad to me, but comic books, like I was drawing issues of Cable in his hospital in UCLA the summer. I actually did 2 full issues just sitting going because UCLA is an hour up the freeway. So again, comics were there for me then, right? I'm just sitting there. I'm going, I can sit next to my dad. My job comes with me. So that's the great thing about comic books. I get to drive up. My wife and I and my sister, we'd all pass off days. But when I went up there, I've always driven on a lap board. The desk is really just decoration. I am a lap board guy my whole life. So whipped out the lap board, draw comics and whatever. So again, didn't expect, you probably are like, whoa, where'd this go? But that's unfortunately, he didn't really, he died in his 60s. So he's a very young man. He was in his 40s when he got his first tumor. So he would go back to being a preacher during that early 80s. But again, it kind of whacked him out, the cancer and the tumors.
Rob, would this create a situation where you feel some pressure to be breadwinner for the family in some capacity?
Yeah, no, 100%. Ed, when they are financially destitute by the late 80s, my parents are wiped out financially. We get a condo together. I am contributing my part carrying half of it. My mom is working, and Ed, the key information. Here's what I'm gonna tell you about Todd McFarlane. The best coach comic books ever had. He was almost a union organizer. I thought I was special, but then I found out he was doing it with everybody, which is great. It's fantastic. He would call up and go, you should ink your own work. Not only will you get paid more and you'll like the product more, if you can master the inks, you'll also get an extra royalty. You should write your own work. You should get that extra royalty. You should do a poster for Marvel. That royalty comes to you quarterly, and that poster sells for, Todd was very much. And so what I would do, I had a legal pad. Yes. Again, to the kids of today, legal pads, yellow, there's lines, you write on them and you kind of pin them to your bulletin board. Also something maybe no one knows what, everything's gone digital, man. I mean, literally, I'm a relic. You guys are not far behind me because I have teenagers. Oh my gosh, they show me how freaking old I am every day. But I would work out how much I needed to make to get my parents a place because I wanted to buy them a house. Now, how that would work out is that New Mutants job, which started out in the dumpster. People have lost the other thing. People have lost a sense of history in comics because we don't have as many of the interview magazines, and so many of the websites are not interviewed in-depth analysis of what we do. They just want clickbait headlines. What did Ben Affleck say today when he was out on a walk? Okay. Did he make some sort of bat signal with his hands? Is he going to be Batmaning? Okay. You guys know how it goes. We have lost this analysis that, at its peak, comics had so many interview magazines where you could really get inside the brains and the minds of these guys. But New Mutants was a fixer-upper. I was offered it under the, auspices that it was going to be canceled if it wasn't turned around because I had denied. They offered me X Factor. And what that means to your audience, X Factor was the third spin-off book from the X-Men. It featured the original 5 X-Men who would be transformed. Obviously, when I was going to be offered it, there was no more Angel. He was Archangel. I've gone into great depths how the X-Men, why they failed prior to the new X-Men, is the team was so boring. Temple touchers and arm casters. I'm going to turn you to ice. I'm going to hurt your head. I'm going to blast you. That all changed when Wolverine said, I have 6 knives and I will stab you. And, suddenly you're like, ho, weapons, I'm in. It just changed the dynamic. And with X Factor, the original X-Men, it was a good selling book, but I would have had to I would be following Walt Simonson. And I knew that my career was going to crash and burn if I follow Walt Simonson. Who wants to get compared to one of the all-time greats? That's bad. And even my editor said, what are you doing here? He said, Rob, that gig pays really good, the royalties. And I want to tell you guys, because eventually you'll have him on and you can ask him, Mark Silvestri. That's the guy everyone was stalking. You want to talk about a name that was dropped a lot. Todd would be like, Bud Silvestri, he's cleaning up. He's cleaning up with these royalties. This is a bad Todd. I'm not feeling it. But the thing is, he'd be like, oh, Mark's got that house in Malibu. And Mark did have a house on the freaking sand. You could go 15 yards and hit the Pacific Ocean. And we would visit it because Mark was throwing in the late 80s, from about 87, 88, 89, he threw the After San Diego party at his house. Now, I'm not going to tell you it was a sprawling mansion. It was a 1-bedroom, 1 living room, kitchen. But dude, it was on Pacific Coast Highway. He had his silver Porsche. This guy, this is X-Men money. This cat went from King Conan to the X-Men and was the most successful guy in comics. And I only learned that really from Todd telling me, oh, Bud, he's making the bucks. And Todd would be like, he's making X amount on the royalties, and I'm trying to get Spider-Man to the X-Men level so that I can make these kind of royalties. And look, we should make as much money as we possibly can doing what we do. Who doesn't want to provide the most for your family? See, I've never been a material guy. So everything I'm making is for my family. It goes back to my mom and dad, like you're asking me now, can I get them a place? Well, so X Factor was trucking below X-Men, just below X-Men in sales. So turning that gig down was financially irresponsible, but it would have ruined my career. And I'm going to tell you, man, someday we can do a whole thing on the terrible advice. I have watched about 10 guys in the last decade, and I go, don't make that move. Don't crap, there went your career. And literally, they literally went, hey, everybody, watch me climb into the toilet and flush. Boom. And you're like, you are the dumbest of the dumbasses, like what you just did. And a couple of them, I swear to you, they've reached out. And I'm like, I'm going to be the guy who gives the great advice. And I started giving one of them advice. And the wife looked at me like, oh, we're definitely not doing that. And I'm like, no, don't, wife. I don't need to deal with you. Support what I'm telling you. If your husband does this, he's the biggest thing on planet Earth. And it's time. Windows are important. And in this window, because how did I have a career that got everyone's attention? I took a concept that had not worked in years with Hawk and Dove. They didn't have their own title, much less a successful version of it. And we were trucking in sales. That Hawk and Dove miniseries did big sales for Marvel. For DC Comics. And Female Dove, Click, me and the Kiesels, we delivered. And again, you guys got to remember, I was the last picked. They were waiting for everybody else to say yes. I lobbied for that job for the better part of a year. That outline that I read, I said, I want to do this. I can contribute. I'll give you the best version of this. The editor continued to tell me, well, we've got it out to some other people. We've got it out to some other people. We're waiting for this guy to say yes. We're waiting for this guy to say yes or say no. And so literally when I was picked, I knew I was the last picked. But we fixed it up. We made it dynamic. We attracted attention. So with New Mutants, I knew that was my opportunity, if there was one to be had, to turn the ship around and to make a career, make a name. And I mean, it requires some long-term thinking, rather than doing, and I don't mean this as a slight towards anyone, but the latest issue of Batman, okay? Because the minute you draw Batman, where are you going to get in line behind the 15 greatest Batman artists of all time? Have fun climbing that hill. Good for you. I'll be cheering from afar because that's some big ass icons you're going to climb over. Okay. So, and can it be done? It can absolutely be done, but it's not a challenge I did not want to follow Walt Simonson. So the thing is, Ed, when it started turning, and Jim, when it started turning and the sales went up, I mean, I had a great following, and sales were going up about 15 to 20,000 an issue. And then suddenly, when I took over writing and drawing the book, like they're like, Rob, we've leapt to the 700,000s. Like you are kissing the X-Men sales. So those checks started turning into $40,000 royalty checks, $50,000 royalty checks, $100,000 royalty checks. My royalty from New Mutants 100 was six figures. And New Mutants 100, this is what I tell people. People go, what's your favorite job? I'm like, there was no scratch and sniff. You can't drag me into, oh, you had 5 cards and an interconnecting cover and an acetate. No gimmicks. New Mutants was just a comic book. It was double-sized. It was the last issue of this book before we pivoted to something that no one knew was coming. And my favorite is, here, I got to close my eyes to do this. I'm going to do this. I got to get psyched up. My Propel bottle will be my phone. Oh, Bud, what's an X-Force? What's an X-Force? Rob, I think you're ambitious. You'll be lucky to sell a mill. Nobody knows what an X-Force is. And I was like, all right, mofo, I'll show you what an X-Force is. An X-Force is what sits on top of a Spider-Man. Boom! Boom! Okay? So, but the thing is, oh, what's an X-Force? I'll show you, buddy. And you can buy those X-Force toys 9 months from now, Todd, at Target, Walmart, and everywhere else. Boom! Dude, slight me, and it will just energize me in the best possible way. But that was a guy telling me when I asked him, do you think I'll be able to sell X amount of X-Force? So my mentor, the guy I looked up to, is telling me, adjust your expectations. You're not going to even sell this much. So when New Mutants 100 goes back to press 3 times, again, you get the silver edition, the gold edition, those checks came. Ed, what does I do? Jim, what do? I buy my parents a house. Boom. House bought, moved my grandparents into. My parents, it was a cool house, man.
I saw that house, man. Shouts to Dan Fraga. He drove me around Anaheim and took me to all your homes.
There you go. So It was that was my motivation. So I didn't want a silver Porsche. God bless you. You want a sports car? The only time I had a sports car, it was the dumbest thing I ever did. And my buddy talked me into it because all the Image partners had sports cars. It was so stupid. But I'm just not a car guy. I've never been I like comic books and I like my Frank Miller, Dark Knight statue. Right? So, but anyway, so yes, Ed, it was taking care of my parents. Who doesn't want to take care of my parents, right? I mean, who doesn't want to take care of their folks when they're struggling? And it was fun for my mom. She remembered like, oh boy, comics took care of this kid. Like, it was just a great period to be making comics too. I mean, there was genuine excitement, and every time I kept Polaroids at the time. Polaroids, that was the camera of the day, right? And I saw it from about New Mutants 92 on. Every time I would do a store appearance, the crowds were bigger and the lines were longer, and you could feel the support. And I'd look at them, and these people would tell me, these awesome fans would tell me how much the work was exciting them. And it was, like I said, that first San Diego in the big new convention center, I'm doing X-Force. I'm signing X-Force #1. It just came out. They had to move me off the floor. I was clogging up they literally, San Diego came and said, we need to move you outside. If you guys have been there, I know you have, in the back of the convention, the foyer that you can take the stairs. So you go all the way to the back of the convention center and past some of the snack, the snack shops, the concessions. There's one area that they'll take you escalators to the back top of the convention center. They put me back there. I got completely taken off the floor, but that's because the crowds were showing up. And the reason I'm talking about this is I was not alone. There was a whole legion of talent that was moving the needle, and it was our time, and it was spectacular. And, I just don't see that being the same anymore. It's more of a corporate movement, and they're allowing themselves to be corporately controlled and screw that. That's not who I am. Like, no way. Even if I'm doing a licensed character, I clear everything that I'm doing, like with G.I. Joe, in advance. Like, if you don't clear this storyline, I can't interact with you. Snake Eyes, circling back to that, Snake Eyes, I put Snake Eyes in a Rob Liefeld story. I did not put Rob Liefeld in a G.I. Joe story. I literally was like, no, you're coming with me. We're going to hang out and do things my way and see if that works. So again, that's just how I've always approached it. Again, and Snake Eyes also is the New Mutants right now. G.I. Joe is selling 3,000 copies. Okay. I'm like, I need to rejuvenate my childhood favorite. If G.I. Joe feels like it's closer to the Lone Ranger right now than like the X-Men, right? Like my boys don't know what G.I. Joe is. They're 18 and 20. They couldn't name you a single damn character, and they saw those movies. Okay. Of course, right now they know who Snake Eyes because they see Dad drawing it. But like, I want to jumpstart, be the paramedic that brings G.I. Joe, get some attention to it, because it's such a great concept. But it has definitely kind of fallen by, I think there's no controversy in what I'm saying. G.I. Joe has definitely, in the most polite way, the volume has been turned down. And I'm here to turn the volume all the way up and blast the speakers and blow them out, because G.I. Joe deserves it, right? So I will put my body on that altar and sacrifice it, because there was no guarantee. I'm telling you right now, there was no guarantee that, hey, I'm going to go play with G.I. Joe and it's going to be successful. That was it's a risk. But without risks, what good is it? I just don't, the sure things don't appeal to me. Woo!
Rob, there's a lot there. I want to move on from talking about your father, but I have to say, do you think there's parallels in his storytelling as a minister and what you do as a comic book artist? You're
That's
both
a great
storytellers.
question. Yes, of course. People tell me I am like a pastor when I am giving my panels in I hope we can be in the same building and you can come see, because I do not sit for the last 7-8 years, I stand. I don't have moderators. I mic in my hand and I walk left to right on the stadium, and on the platform. I believe I have a little bit of my Baptist minister in me. The first guy who ever said that to me was Jim Lee. He goes, you can tell you're a pastor's kid. You're a pastor's kid. Look, the one thing that Todd and I have in common that's wonderful is we love to talk. It's like, hell yeah, you guys like to talk. Holy shit, shut the hell up. So we like to talk. Now, Todd obviously wasn't, but I do have the pastor background. So yes.
The other thing that I wanted to continue on, you talk about G.I. Joe selling poorly right now.
Right.
You've been in this game since mid 80s. Like, you've seen these numbers peak in the early 90s and then kind of fall ever since to where they are today.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on, how do we rejuvenate the comics industry? How do we get those numbers back up?
Okay. I don't have the magic, button answer. The bottom line is we are, here's the deal. There are guys who try and tell me that we aren't competing with things like video games. I believe those people are 100% wrong. Distractions are distractions. They take you away. As many pop up is as many that you have to compete with. Our comic books blowing up were before movie superheroes took flight, for instance. And now you get these, glamorous $200-300 million budgeted movies, I was with a guy from Marvel. We were at dinner 2 years ago, and one of the other guys at Marvel said, can you confirm, is the joint budget for Infinity War and Endgame $600 million? And he said, I can confirm that. And look, they don't care. Combined, it made $3 billion. So that was a good investment for them. That was, at that point, they knew what they were doing. Video games, mobile games, there's a competition for attention spans. But if you can get comic books into more places, I guess that's one area. But here's the deal, man. We have to be better at marketing ourselves and selling ourselves. We can hand sell through social media, but Jim, there's a lot of bad, useless comic books. And that is let me backtrack. There's too many comic books and there's not enough great comic books. And the industry has always risen on great comic books. And I'm telling you, man, there's not a lot I'm interacting with. And the reason that, and I'm not alone, I'm diving back into the comic book greats that I fell in love with and the guys that I fell in love with. And I talked to 2 different retailers in this pandemic who, by the way, killed it. They crushed it. They said, we've got to go digital or we're dead. And they sold on their different Facebook and Instagram streams. And one guy goes, Rob, I'm making more money now selling comics than I did pre. And he's like, because people who want comics want comic books. There may not be any new comics, but they're happy to buy the stuff they loved and revisit it, or new versions of that. And I've seen it. He's not alone. I said 2 retailers. I should say 5 retailers that I personally, interacted with. The great stuff is perennial. It'll always sell. Look, here's the deal. I also think digital needs to. So I went to, in the early 2000s, a startup like incubator, whatever, in Los Angeles. This guy who had all this, what was it called in the early 2000s? All that tech money, website money. And they wanted me to come down because they wanted to show me how they were going to present a comic book on the internet. And I've never seen it done better. And I don't know why it didn't, but they sat down, they showed me the demo of how the panel wiped on the page. And then the next 3 panels wiped. And dude, it was exciting. It wasn't just flip, 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 flip. And you're going, Rob, was it animated? No, nothing moved with the line art. But the presentation, the razzle, the dazzle, we have to continue to adapt. We as artists continue to reach people with our art. But comic books is, you have to consume them because you prefer that as your delivery source for entertainment and stories, and know that those are great escapes. And I saw it with my oldest son, who was never into comics, but Green Lantern, way prior to the movie, the middle of Jeff Johns' run, he picked that out, isolated that as what he liked. And with his own allowance money, his savings, he bought all the trades and he collected Green Lantern, and he loved Green Lantern. And he was not sold Green Lantern by his dad. I like Green Lantern, but he was not sold it. That's what he dug. He was into it. And for whatever reason, he grew out of it. He and all his friends, my son's 16th birthday, I bought all the tickets for the the 10 people that went to the Civil War IMAX, Marvel Civil War. And you're like, wait a second, these guys all love Marvel characters. And I said to one of them, like, so you really like this stuff? And he goes, Mr. Liefeld, I want to make it very clear. I'm a Marvel character fan. I'm not a Marvel comic book fan. I'm like, you don't have to tell me, buddy. I didn't just buy 10 comic books. I bought 10 movie tickets for you cats, right? But Jim, there is no easy answer other than, and I really do believe this, we have to promote what we do. And look, here's the deal. I have been on the horn about Snake Eyes. I have blown it up. I have used my platform. I have look, I'll be honest, a year ago, Marvel wasn't doing shit for Major X. They did shit for it. They gave, here's the deal. And this is presented without grist, without bitterness. I hate when people trying to put that stuff on me. And that's the other reason about the podcast. People hear my voice. And when people hear me talk, they don't associate me with this old grumpy man that the Twitter trolls try and make me out to be some guy in a wheelchair shaking his stick. Okay. I'm excited. I have great energy, but I can just isolate something and say, because I went to Marvel, I was so consumed with making sure Major X shipped on time, my end and everybody else's end, because I felt like there wasn't a whole lot of support there. I handpicked the creative team. I had to fight for some of them. My buddy Brent Peoples, my buddy Adelso Corona, everybody on the team, I had to kind of fight to get them in positions to help me out. They had offered me a group of guys, to be honest, that were not ready they weren't ready to be amateurs. I could not believe so I got the clearance to go recruit my own, my own group of kind of my own A team. And we produced Major X. And I don't mind telling the story. I was so consumed making it, and the way Marvel and DC anoint their projects, the way they anoint them right now is with all the variant covers. That tells you we think this is something you should be involved in. House of X, 32 covers. Absolute Carnage last summer, 34 covers. Okay? They are trying to tell you, we want you to buy great volumes of this. We have budgeted for this. We have War of the Realms. We have 25 covers on. We want you to come on this journey with us. This is what we have anointed. Well, so the month before Major X, Domino, my Domino, okay? The first Domino 2 years ago in 2018 got canceled. It didn't get ordered. So now they've refurbished it, boys. It's Domino and the Hot Shots, right? Domino and the Hot Shots, baby. It gets 5 covers. That's all on my fingers. It gets 5 covers. And it sells 26,000 copies with 5 covers. Major X, I look and I go, oh, I thought I was getting support. I got one variant. Like, and you're like, Rob, you shouldn't be in the variants. This is the language of what they anoint and say is special. And of course, I now see this 3 months before the book came out. Did I grab C.B. Cebulski's arm and say, you guys didn't support this, and I'm going to sell this book out. I am going to commit everything I have to selling this book out. And I think CB was like, oh, okay, you're a little hot about this. I am hot. I told the publisher of Marvel, John Nee, I don't even know if he's there anymore. I said, you guys didn't support this properly. You left sales on the table. And what happens? Ed, Jim, I decide I'm going to dedicate my platform to blowing up Major X. And I can still hear, what's up, Major X? It's in my head. I'm being, it's like 25 years later. It's just saying, what the? So I'm like, here we go again. I got this unknown X quantity. Major X sells out a week before it shows up. It sells out. It blows out. With its one cover, it sold 45,000 copies. Not a big number to dance around to, but we then go back to press and we sell 68,000 copies. Wow. And that's on the back of me and my enthusiasm and because I wrote and drew it. I wrote and drew the whole thing, the whole first issue, the book that's selling out. And I am pushing it and pushing it. And when I said to Marvel, you gave 5 covers to a character that I created that had been canceled previously, and then you restarted, you gave it 5 covers. Their answer, well, it needed 5 covers, Rob. It needed 5 covers. And I just needed 1, so I was put out to flail for myself instead of all this. What I'm really getting at is, like I said, you have to understand the variants are the anointing of the project. This is how we say it's important. And I was like, you are not going to put me in the back of the room. You are not going to put me in the last row. I refuse. And that is my example. And the way I can kind of sum up what happened is the ticker was going so high. I mean, so we went out at 45,000 and ended up at 68. Dude, I mean, we had over 20,000 on the first issue in reorders. What are they doing? The Wednesday it comes out, I get the email from the sales department and CB Sabowski. Rob, what if we added an issue to the series? It was approved and budgeted as a 6-issue series. Can we do a Major X 0? Because what's happening now, we're capitalizing on that which we ignored. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't care. Let's keep it trucking, because I believed in that project. I would not have invested my time if I thought it was going to be diminished, right? And then to see like I've just given you a direct comparison. Domino's Hot Shots, 5 covers. It's special, 26,000 copies. Major X, kind of over here. Does double, and it's on my back. Snake Eyes, same thing, guys. I can't rely on anybody. What's a retailer going to go to their kid who's not buying G.I. Joe? Here's the truth, and I hope Hasbro forgives me for this. I can even name the stores. I went into 2 stores, Pop Comics in Anaheim and Fat Collectibles in Anaheim, before I took the Snake Eyes gig. Before I took the Snake Eyes gig, I said, well, I should go grab some Snake Eyes, some G.I. Joe books and see what's going on right now. Because Chris Ryle at IDW had reached out to me and said, Rob, based on Major X, right, in the spring of last year, he goes, it's time. We should do Snake Eyes now, dude. What do you think? What do you think? Because we had danced around it for a long time. And so I said, well, let me get back to you. I got in my car. I drove to Pop Comics in Anaheim, Fat Collectibles in Anaheim. And I went in there and I'm quiet. I'm keeping to myself. I'm going through alphabetically. I can't find G.I. Joe. I finally, at both stores, turned to the clerk. They know me. I said, hey, do you guys not have G.I. Joe? And the guy goes, we only carry those for subscribers, Rob. There's no copies for the shelf. And I was like, that convinced me to do G.I. Joe. I was incensed. I stammered out there, fired up my car. I'm like, what the hell? G.I. Joe is not on the shelf? What the? Like, seriously, man. That's why I'm like, we gotta get G.I. Joe. Like, we gotta restart it. Like, give it the, now, a month after I signed on to do Snake Eyes, a month after, literally it's timed. They announced it 4 weeks after I did the comic. They announced that Paramount's making the movie, which honestly, I love it. Give me the support. Holy shit. Now there's a movie. Okay, awesome. Because again, that's a commercial. That's a commercial. And we're looking for commercials, right? And so anyway, Jim, Ed, you have to promote yourself. And that money is not even what I'm looking at. I said on one of my last podcasts, most people who take their books to Image or to an independent label are looking at what's the minimum that I need to make to do what I love. Okay. Anything over that is gravy. And when I see so many of the success stories in comics, I'm so excited for them, because that means whatever they put to paper, whatever words, whatever ink, pen that's been able to buy them a house, put their kids through school, they did that with their art, right? They did that with their talents. And that's phenomenal. It's awesome to see. But if you think in this market, you can put something out and not bang the drums and not, and here's how I look at it. My friend who works at a hospital is like in administration, was worried about losing her job. And I said, you got to go in there like you're Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and tell him you're the best at what you do. I'm the best administrator. Nobody's administrating like me. I said, it's the culture we live in. You got to pound that chest. And that dude gets up every day and wants us to remind you and me that he's the best. He is not going to rest on his laurels. He's like, hey, everybody, look at my bulging muscles and my tiny tank top. And here's these giant dumbbells I'm lifting. And don't you see how awesome I am? And I am awesome. And I'm awesome. And because I'm awesome, we're going to do awesome together. Let's be awesome. I'm The Rock. And dude, that's a page right out of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was inspired by Magic Johnson and Arnold Schwarzenegger in the late 80s in how, dude, Arnold completely reset how you promote a movie. He made everybody else work harder because he's like, I will go on your show. Yes, I have a new movie, The Kindergarten Cop. You must see it. It's the greatest. And you're like, I'm going to see Kindergarten Cop. And he's on with Oprah. He's on with Donahue. He's on the local. So I've got the Kindergarten Cop. The children are bad and I'm protecting them. You're just like, he worked at you guys. Newspaper interviews. He was relentless. And I was like, I'm going to do that for comics. And so, Jim, I don't have a magic button, but we can't relax. And you can't rely on your publisher. That Marvel story, if it shows you anything, you cannot rely on your publisher. You have to go out and move your shit.
I love it. You know, I mean, that's something that we've talked about on here, Rob. And you started out talking about like the Marvel movies having a $600 million budget. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but movies typically, whatever their budget is for production is also their budget for marketing. And that's what we say all the time about these comics, that we spend so much time and resources. And, you know, if time is money, we put all of this into making these comics. And then most of us don't follow through with the selling part of that, the promotional part of that. And it's not always money. You know, it may be resources, it may be time, it may be a publicist that you hire, but it's that same amount of effort that goes into making the thing should be going into selling it if you want it to sell.
No, that and it requires work. And at the end of the day, maybe you book 6 interviews and maybe your throat is sore and you're gonna have to have, you know, throat lozenges for the next 2 days. I've been there, I've done that. But are you selling your project? And look, you know, my kids have shown me how to use social media, and they are not shy when they go, "Oh my gosh, Dad, your social media is ass. It's awful. It's just awful." And I'm like, okay, I will learn. I will dial it down. But again, I got to find another, you know, way to turn and make that work for me and take their criticisms. I look, my teenagers are very instrumental to me, but you know, look, if you've got art, you've got to sell that art. You cannot just rely on the fact that that they're going to sell it for you. So, you know, I don't care if you're getting your comics into Walmart. Once they're there, are you selling them? Are you getting them in to the hands of the people at Walmart? Because just getting them in the Walmart is the start, right? And that's the one thing I think the guys in Image, we understood. Sell. If you're, you know, real estate guys always say, and I think there's that boiler room, Ben Affleck, Vin Diesel, always be closing, man. If you're not closing, what are you doing? And it's your art, Jim, it's your art. Ed, it's your art. It's our art. We want, you know, if I put it in front of somebody's eyes and they don't like it, well, at least it made it there. At least I got it in front of them.
Let's jump around a little bit. So one thing I've always wanted to ask you about is Youngblood shows up in 1986 in an ad. You were very, very young whenever you show up with Cable and New Mutants. So
right.
How old are you? And, you know, like whenever you start getting work in the mid 80s.
Oh, you know what? And to add on top of that, Gary Carlson. I've never heard too much of what you had to say about him on the record. So any Gary Carlson stories hooking you up with?
So Gary Carlson is the sweetest. Here's what so Ed, it's so funny. I was driving with my wife to dinner last night, telling her all about Gary Carlson. I went on Gary's website and bought 15 copies of my Megaton book the other day. Just, you know, it was 6 a.m. in the morning. I realized through the day before I couldn't find them. I just ordered them, hit the send, and, you know, I trust that they'll get there. Gary contacts me like 2 hours later. What are you doing? You do not buy your own comics from me, dude. I will send them to you. But Gary, have you met him? Have you seen him?
No.
He looks like George Wendt, Norm from Cheers, if he was 6'3", but then take George Wendt's character in Saturday Night Live. Da Bears. Da Bears. The famous Da Bears skit with George Wendt, Norm from Cheers. Make him 6'2", 6'3", a really big guy, but same kind of white man afro, curly hair. That is Gary Carlson. And he talks like this, Rob. Oh, that's great. Super positive, nothing but energy. That first Comic-Con, I have it right behind me. I'm not going to reach and get it. That I go to with those talents. 1982, 1983, maybe the next year. It's within a year. I see on the table of one of the retailers this book called Megaton. It's Megaton #1. Butch Geist, who wasn't Jackson Geist yet, who I loved on the Micronauts, a Marvel guy, has a killer shot of this badass black superhero. He's in this badass pose, and I go, that's Butch Geist. Holy crap. I open it up. It's thick. It's like 60 pages. It's got a guy named Eric Larson in it. It's got Butch Geist. It's got Frank Fosco. It's got all these names I haven't heard of, only Butch Geist. I think it was 250, whatever. I forked it over and I was like, what is this? It's from Chicago. It's a small publisher. I started writing fan mail to them. I made sure my retailer knew to order it because my retailer wasn't covering. If I don't go to San Diego, I don't interact with Megaton #1. Then my retailer says, I'll start ordering it for you. Black and white comic book. Gary Carlson has this whole universe that he's putting out, which is Megaton, Ultraman, Ultra Girl, I think Etrion, Vanguard, all these characters. And again, when you love comics, you want more comics. And Gary had an eye for talent, man. He then hired a guy named Angel Medina, who would go on to blow up at Marvel. Angel does like I was just reading them all yesterday because I got all. The irony is I have every Megaton. I just didn't have my own, right? You're like, is this what's this bullshit? So I had to, I swiped my card, I bought my comics, and Gary's like, I'm refunding you and I'm sending these to you. So they arrived 2 days ago and I poured over it and all the memories of sitting there. So I am 18 years old when he gives me a job, and I'm 18 when I am hired by Marvel. My birthday is late in the year, so I'm October. So by the time you get into the new year, then I'm now 19 by the end of whatever year that was. So I graduated when I was 17. 1985, I'm 17. I turned 18 the following. In 1986, I started getting gigs. And Gary, I had when I told you guys earlier that my dad, we flew to Chicago for his next brain surgery, the Chicago Comic-Con was going on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm here during the Chicago Comic-Con. And because I was a member of the Teen Titans fan club, which was a APA, which is Amateur Press Association, right? Amateur Press. I would have my pinups. I would make 60 copies, mail it in. All this fandom that I involved myself with. I had made friends in Illinois. I had gotten their phone numbers. We all split a room at the Chicago Comic-Con. And I got to see all this other talent that I had never met because, not the same talent goes to all the shows. And so Chicago, 1985, I meet Gary Carlson. I pour all over him and what he's doing. And he looks at my samples and he says, keep sending me work. You're not there yet. So that's 85 and 86. He's ready to give me the job. A buddy of mine who I actually had draw a short Youngblood story that I haven't published yet, but his name's Ron Williams. He just did his first work. The latest issue of Big Bang Comics is a Megaton story, and he drew it. And I'm like, Gary still has a great eye. He has a great eye. He has an opportunity to publish you. The books are now in color. He agreed to do Youngblood. Unfortunately, I was way too ambitious. I have about 30 pages of Youngblood #1 that you've never seen. It's just Sentinel's team, not Shaft and Badrock and those characters, but Sentinel, Cougar, Brahma, and I blue lined it all out. I had it in my hands, in the garage yesterday because I have all these drawers in the garage where I store a lot of the artwork. And so anybody who tries to come steal from me, I also have cameras everywhere. Okay, so anyway, the thing is that 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 Youngblood, I blue penciled out figures and some faces, but it's not finished artwork by any means. But then, of course, Gary gave me my first break, wanted to cut the deal with me, but I did not feel confident, even though I trusted Gary, that I would end up owning Youngblood at the time. I didn't have a lawyer. I'm a kid. I'm 18, 19. So, and then Marvel started phoning me up and started hiring me. So I backed off a little and started doing that work. But Gary has always been near and dear to my heart. I would do anything for him in a minute. He is the sweetest man, the kindest man. He's still out there making comics. I mean, he's got to be in his late 60s, maybe 70. But again, we've talked back and forth. I mean, would I love to do a Megaton cover for a Big Bang comic right now? Yes, I hope to, because that guy, again, you remember the people who gave you a shot. And for me, Gary is the first guy to greenlight me and publish me and put me with an inker. And I look at that story, I see all the flaws, but I still love that backup story, that 8-page story that I did in Megaton. I'm like, this was such a blast to draw. It pushed me. There wasn't a lot of action. Trust me, when I got nobody throws a punch in the story. It's just interaction. There's a romance. So it was great. It was great fun. So, but definitely he published Megaton in his first colored comic, which was called Megaton Explosion. which he gave me the double pager, which put the characters out there. Again, the Sentinel base team. So nothing but love for Gary Carlson, independent comics, and just, again, hopefully we can shake some trees and get Megaton lit up and excited again. Because like I said, I've been talking to him in the last few days. Reaching out and buying those comics opened up a chain of communication with him, and we got a lot going on.
That's
good question.
That's super cool, man. I wonder, part of the new Teen Titans fan club and those APPAs, is this where you would have gotten to know Hank Canals, the script writer for issue 1 of Youngblood?
Yes. No, Hank and I became great friends. He moved out to Southern California, let me know. His parents moved they got a place about 20 minutes away from me in 1987. And so I'm driving out to his house probably twice a week at least, and we're hanging out, we're pouring over comics and digging comics. And Hank started his own APPA called Yappa, Young Hero APPA. And so I was kind of his co-pilot on that, but that was his gig. And no, we jammed a lot. And again, he had, Hank and I went out to lunch at San Diego 2 years ago. And there was maybe a Youngblood movie coming together at that time. And I told him, you need to be aware of what's going on, and I'm going to make sure you get something for it. Because in all honesty, Hank really was just the script guy, but by landing that credit in the legality of things, as I understand it, he is owed. So Hank can tell you, everything Rob is telling you right now is on the up and up. I think he was surprised I reached out to him. He's been at DC for almost 20 years. We went, hung out, probably an hour more than we thought, 2 hours, caught up. We've always been friendly online. I have great respect for him, but I said, you should be, aware that if this goes forward, I think we should establish what you're going to get, because I'm not the only participant on that property, but I wanted to make sure that Hank was taken care of. And just by reaching out and contacting him, I felt, as I understand it, legally, under the law, as I understand it, he's entitled. So we spoke, but the reason I'm bringing this up is he had this bad-ass idea towards kind of the end of me going off and getting a professional career, which is always hard, because I got hired into the big leagues, and it's hard for a writer. It's just hard. And he didn't get into comics for a while after. I think he broke into Malibu Comics maybe 4 years after I did. I was at Marvel and DC. So again, but it's hard. It does put a strain on your relationship when your dreams are to make comic books and you get the gig and he doesn't. But he got into the corporate workplace, became a big wig at Six Flags, a division of Warner's. So he was a big wig at the Parks division, and then turned that into his position now at Warner's. But he had this concept that he told me about in 1988. And I said to him in 2018, why aren't you doing this? Dude, he won't mind me. Look, this is Hank Canals Law, L-A-W. Dude, land, air, water. And I had not heard of it prior to 1988. If that existed, I did not know. I've heard of things called law, but not land, air, water. And I'm like, and I said to him, why didn't you ever do anything with that? Like, if you die, I'm taking that. And now I can't, here I am telling you about it, but I don't even understand. Like, law is in my head, I see guys flying through the air, on the ground, and then in boats and cycles land, air, water, law. I think it's freaking brilliant. And I said, why aren't you doing this? We had a mutual friend named Jerome Moore, who did, J.K. Moore did a few DC comics, was one of those guys who was too slow to make a monthly dent. And he went on to work at Warner's Animation for 20 years. So we kind of became a triumvirate, and Jerome is sick talented, amazing talented. But again, I had guys in the studio, trust me, I know the guys who, they are their own worst enemies. They just, when you look at what they put down, you're like, oh my gosh, and they hate it. And you're like, what's wrong with you? That's a brilliant drawing. It's the Achilles heel of some of these great artists. And what they do is then they downgrade to go, well, if I do storyboards and design and animation, it's a faster gig. There's less scrutiny on my work because, it's all about movement and storytelling and not about refined drawings at that point. But so Hank and Jerome had a concept too, outside of Youngblood that I thought they were going to take to the bank too. So, I mean, Hank had a fertile, that stuff was his. He jumped in my rocket ship on Youngblood and we had a good time. And like I said, now he's this big wig at DC taking on all the shrapnel because they're in the news every day now, right? And it's like, hey, caramba. I mean, they're doing what they got to do. And in all honesty, Hank was one of the first guys 2 years ago to tell me that AT&T taking over is a big deal in terms of it's going to be a big issue for everybody. Like that's a giant conglomerate moving in who doesn't understand publishing. I mean, they're a telecommunications company. So I think everybody at DC has their hands full. I may not like the moves they made, ripping their distribution away from, and just to be on the record, when you walk into the comic store and you see these guys who are struggling to keep their stores open, who now have another burden of dealing with new distributors that they may or may not trust, that adds more paperwork, more time, more credit approvals. I felt like the timing was really bad. Maybe it's going to be the thing that saves comics, Jim. Maybe DC going through these different outlets is the new path, but it was probably not the best timing. And that's my commentary on that. But yeah, look, nothing but love for Hank. And I'm telling you, man, law, land, air, water, it's bitching. I'm like, come on, man. So there you go.
Well, speaking of writers, Rob, can we talk about another famous writer that spent some time with your characters?
Yeah.
Alan Moore.
Love him.
Do you have tell us what Alan Moore means to you, what attracted you to him, what it was like, if you have any anecdotes from that time period?
Okay, so guys, again, before anyone evaluates this, let's go back in time. Alan Moore is the most celebrated, acclaimed, I don't even think those words do him justice. Coming off Swamp Thing and Watchmen, he is, one of my podcasts is going to deal with the rivalry between himself and Frank Miller, because there is some great motivations between those two cats. They became the two alphas of our business in 1986. But then Alan does this very experimental, what's the stuff that he does with Bill Sienkiewicz?
Big numbers. All the stuff that we buy, that's Valentino and I are sharing a studio. We go to the comic book store that day to get that, and we're evaluating it. I mean, if Alan Moore was releasing something, you were there. You were there to buy it. Alan kind of takes some time off, is in my memory, and isn't as prominent, isn't as present in the comic book industry. And during the time where I believe the Image guys rise. The Image guys rise, me and my peers, is a movement. It's a wave. It's a giant wave. And like I said, it's 6, 7, it could have been 8 or 9 guys, but really, it was 7 guys who decided to band together. But I think that took comics into a more commercial pop direction, because we liked commercial pop and didn't apologize for. I like fight scenes. I like guns. I like 6ix9ine stabbing you. Okay. So, and it wasn't as maybe analytical and maybe not even as imaginative as the stuff that Alan was doing. But Todd McFarlane is the guy that hires Alan to write Violator. And you're like, wait, he said yes? He's going to write Violator for you? Oh, yeah, bud, Alan's chomping at the bit. And you're like, chomping at the bit to do the Violator? Like, what the hell? What part of the Twilight Zone did I wake up in, right? Okay. Well, so anyway, I initiate Eric Stevenson to contact him and offer him Violator Badrock, because what's better? And Alan's like, I'm just so glad my phone is ringing. And you're like, what the hell happened? Where did we go wrong? Why is, like, I felt bad, like Violator bad, but he wanted to do it. And it's Alan Moore. So he said yes. That's all I needed. It was a yes. Here's the thing also, guys, that I need to really, really beat home. I paid exceptionally well. I took great pride. Look, man, I think I paid, Joe Quesada $70,000 for 9 covers. I've got all the vouchers. I had to go get them for legal reasons for selling the properties and seeing what everybody signed.
And for George Perez, a single illustration, I'd pay him $10,000 in 1992. And he'd be like, "Oh, Rob, you are so generous. Oh my God." I'm like, "Of course I'm generous. I love you, man." And when you're making millions, you can afford to be generous. Now, not everybody was generous, but I chose to be an err on the side of generous. So were we paying Alan Moore a crap ton? Again, Danny Mickey, the inkers at Marvel, when I left, the top rate was $150. I started Danny Mickey at $300 a page. Danny could do 3 pages a day and did 7 days a week. Danny Mickey, John Sabal, there's nobody who's going to tell you that Rob Liefeld was not generous at Extreme Studios, okay? And I'm proud of that. I'm not telling you, that's years in the past, but I honored the guys who are doing work for me by making maybe things a little easier on me than it was, okay? And I was proud that I give Danny Mickey almost $1,000 a day. $1,000 a day. That guy literally was so fast and so talented. So Alan Moore is getting big bucks to do Violator Bad Rock for us. We're paying him a lot of money. So he's super happy. And so what I think he does is, hey, you guys got that Supreme character. He lobbies us. I've been looking at some of these books. Why don't you give me a shot at Supreme? Hell yes. You don't have to ask me twice. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? So, and I think Gary Carlson had been writing the book Supreme prior to him, and he had done about a year on there, and it was time to get a change up. And so Alan put together this mind-blowing first issue. The Supremacy is forgotten by today's readers, but don't think that it's not one of Jonathan Hickman's favorite comics that he ever read, okay? Period, end of story. Because when I read it, and I'm going to tell you, Mark Waid and I were not homies in 1996. Mark Waid did not have the Captain America gig when I was given the Captain America gig. Mark Grunwald and Cap Wolf, God bless him, and today is Mark Grunwald's birthday when we're doing this interview. Mark Grunwald had about a decade on Captain America. And look, all those Marvel icons, Iron Man, Cap, they had all kind of powered down and are in the place where G.I. Joe and this stuff is right now. And I was given the gig and was assuming that Mark Grunwald was going to exit and it was going to go to Rob Liefeld, just like it was Tom DeFalco on the Fantastic Four and it went to Jim Lee. Well, in all honesty, one editor at Marvel was so pissed off that they were making the deal for Heroes Reborn. And I know you're like, Rob, we're talking about Alan. I'm going to get back there because this is all through this filter. Because I got to get to the Mark Waid praising Supreme, and this is how I'm getting there, is one of the editors, we were approached to do Heroes Reborn and to refurbish these characters early 95. The books don't come out till September 96. We negotiated for almost 9 months. Then there was the announcement in early 96, and then the books in late 96. So over this year and a half period, the editor hired Mark Waid and Ron Garney to do Captain America, to basically show Marvel, we can do it on our own. We don't need to go to these guys. So that was an uncomfortable year watching Waid and Garney try and prevent Heroes Reborn from happening by delivering the big numbers that these editors felt they could tell their new overlords that they didn't need to be doing a deal with Jim and Rob. And nobody knew about our deal yet, only people inside the halls. But Mark Waid knew. And Mark Waid was feeling it on Kingdom Come. That was his big project with Alex Ross, right? And Captain America had critical acclaim, and those Captain America issues are really good. They're really good. Probably filed under too little, too late in that era. But Mark Waid comes out when Alan Moore's first issue of Supreme comes out and goes, "This may be the best book I've read in the last decade." Like, he has a quote. He like in one of the magazines, one of the Wizards, it's one of his recommends. They said, "Well, what are you reading right now?" He's like, "I'm reading Alan Moore's Supreme, and I can't believe I'm saying that." It hit the industry so massively that, and to familiarize your reader, the first, I think it's Supreme 41. Alan Moore introduces Supreme, and in the middle of the story, he flies up to his citadel, and you see all these other versions of Supreme. And he introduces the Supremacy, where older versions of Supreme go to live out the rest of their existence. And really what he was doing is the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men, once Dave Cockrum took over, they go to the X-Men version of the Supremacy. And Dave Cockrum's it's literally, I mean, he had all these different eras, the 70s Supreme, the 60s Supreme, the Boy Scout, and then there was the angry, And it was this mind-blowing concept. And they recognize that their time is over, but they exist on this different plane. And I'm telling you, man, it was high level of whoa. And Joe Bennett, who is blowing up on Immortal Hulk right now, did those first initial issues that took everybody by storm. Well, we're not stupid. We want more from Alan. So Alan then decides, well, I'll give you a rollout for everything. Like I'll do Youngblood, I'll do Glory. He gave us this expansive, very bold, ambitious outline for what he would do. In the meantime, I asked him, could you do a crossover for me? And I got to be honest, Ed, Jim, I was looking for like a Galactus type event, like a big giant alien. And I said to him, all I need out of you is a title. I have a title. I want you to fill it in. It's called Judgment Day. Judgment Day. And he's like, all right. I'll get back to you on that. All right. And he calls me back up and pitches me the O.J. Simpson trial as a superhero drama. And I'm like, am I not supposed to understand that this is O.J.'s trial? Like, he has my prominent black superhero murder his blonde girlfriend, Nicole. I mean, and it plays out in a giant court of law. And I said, so this is what you want to do. It's a courtroom drama. And it was the most he ever said to me, like, well, you can take it or leave it, mate. Like, kind of like, this is what I'm giving you. And I ain't giving you the big galactic shit. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not dumb. Let's go. And look, Judgment Day turned out to be absolutely brilliant with all the Book of Judgment and the way it traveled through the Extreme Universe. Look, like I said, I'm not dumb enough to say no. And my pride always is, whether it's Alan Moore or Joe Keating on Glory, I go, that looks cool. Let's do that. It's not what people expect. Green light. I don't try and conform people to what I want. I literally gave Alan a title. I just wanted it, but I thought I was getting gods from the heavens to judge Earth, right? No, I got a courtroom drama. So pretty awesome. And it's a great series. And he went on. And the only thing I regret is I asked him to do this concept of mine called War Child, which was War Child. We did a mini series, and in the elevator pitch is it's a squire boy who dreamed of being a knight is summoned. They were trying to summon the knight, but they summoned the squire boy instead. And he ends up on the platform as the savior. And they're like, they only had one shot to pull this knight, and they got the squire boy instead. And so he is teamed with the cyborg named Stone. So Sword and Stone, ooh, high concept. I love those names, and I love that it was kind of a tweak at Disney, Sword and Stone, but I couldn't call the book Sword and Stone, so I called it War Child. Well, he and I have a taped conversation with him that I will release at some point near my death of 2 hours where I recorded Alan, and he knew it. He was like, oh, I'm fine. And he had just come out of seeing Pulp Fiction, and you want to see a guy whose hair is on fire. Alan Moore is like, I just can't get Tarantino off my brain. He would stammer a lot. Okay,
Rob, this needs to be the next Robservations. I need to hear these. I need to hear this tape. Alan Moore on Pulp Fiction. Yes, please.
And he pitched me a future of Los Angeles, and he says to me, he goes, and Rob, the Los Angeles is run by the blood Crips, and I'm like, I got an Englishman in London telling me about the blood Crips, okay? Like, these are sentences he's forming. And he's like, Rob, there are magic hitmen. And the whole thing starts with a guy who shows up to do a magic hit on a guy, and the guy's fumbling the spell that he's about to put on the guy. That's just genius. Alan wrote 2 of these. I have the plots. The full scripts. And it's just, he never did the third one because he was overwhelmed with everything else. Alan did 2.5 brilliant years on Supreme, and we paid him a shit ton of money. The reason I'm telling you this is it became, when we transitioned to Awesome and our offices were up in Century City, and it's myself and Jeff Loeb, who is our kind of publisher, and Eric Stevenson is our editor-in-chief. Alan, we would pay him, I think at that time, $10,000 a script. He would send 2 scripts in every Friday. So he's getting 20 grand wired to him every Friday. And he'd be like literally, we'd get a call. I'm faxes. Nothing was email yet. Pull these papers out of the fax machine. And you're like, I've set my scripts. I want to make sure that you're going to issue payment. 3 years, we never issued payment. If you think that you wouldn't have heard if I didn't pay Alan Moore, Rob Liefeld stiffs Alan Moore, that would be a huge thing. Okay. Well, when my financial partner in Awesome goes under, I make the decision to continue with Supreme. That's a good investment. I'm going to continue to invest down in Alan Moore. He's the best writer, most important writer of all time. The reason the relationship died is one afternoon, he goes, Rob, I'm ready to initiate year 3 on Supreme. And I'm like, I'm ready, dude. Let's do it. I mean, you guys got to understand, we even put it on the cover. He was winning Eagle Awards, Eisner Awards. Supreme was an award-winning comic based on, obviously, his efforts. We had great artists working with him, Chris Sprouse, all manner of guys drawing it. But this is what you want to hear. And at some point you go, Alan, you're trying to con me. Like, come on, man, I can't do this. And because we were not able to initiate Glory and continue Youngblood, the guys at Wildstorm were very savvy and very smart and negotiated with him to transition his worlds to them, which Glory became Promethea, Youngblood became Top 10, Tom Strong picked up where Supreme kind of left off, and I wasn't angry about it. I felt like Alan Moore was owed that, and Scott Denbier and Jim Lee were smart to go, Rob can't afford to do this line anymore, so we're going to do it. But Alan had agreed to do Supreme until the end of his 24th issue, and he goes, I'm ready to continue, but I have some conditions. I have conditions. I'm like, okay, let me hear the conditions, because dude, I'm paying an arm and a leg for your services, Alan. Okay, this book is not a cheap book to produce. And he says, I'm going to bring on a co-writer, and this is exactly what he said. He goes, it's my neighbor. He's such a terrific talent. He's amazing. He taught me everything I know. He's my neighbor, and all I see is a guy standing across the fence from Alan saying, yo, Alan, what's up? And he goes, and his name's Stephen Moore. Stephen Moore. I said, is it spelled M-O-O-R-E like yours? That's correct. Stephen Moore. He would be co-writing with me, actually doing most of the writing. I'll be kind of, I said, wait. And he goes, and he said, but for the same deal we have now. And I said, okay, so the headline's going to read, Rob Liefeld continues Supreme with Stephen Moore as Alan Moore says goodbye. Who looks like the dunce then, right? I mean, I'm barely holding things together with my publishing division, and I'm now being asked to take what I believe is Alan's second best. It's his way of saying, I want to continue to get paid. And I'm going to be honest, he did not expect me to turn him down. He was very irritated. I said, Alan, I don't even have to call you back. Right now, let me inform you that is a no-go for me. If I'm going to initiate a third year and continue on the budget that we have, you have to be the writer. But Stephen, he taught me everything I know. He's a brilliant. I said, Stephen Moore has no track record. Stephen Moore does not have a body of work. Stephen Moore does not have The Watchmen, does not have, any of your brilliance. And I just, that's a bad deal for me. And I'd rather just close it up. I'm not going to try and follow. We're just going to close the chapter. And he's like, well, so there is no Alan Moore year 3 that people missed out on. It was his neighbor, Stephen Moore, who, did I howl when I saw Stephen Moore pop up on the Wildstorm books? I'm like, look, man, at some point you got to go. That may have worked for them, but I had a lot of scrutiny on my back. Closing Awesome was terribly humiliating. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I think that creators knew I was fighting back tears as I had to tell them all we were turning off the lights. It was very traumatic. It was the only time I was truly sad. Juxtaposed when I left Image and I'm on the phone with Steve Jeppy, and Steve Jeppy's like, Rob, they're asking me to shut you down, but I'm going to make sure that all that money for those Marvel Image crossovers you did finds its way to you next week, and we'll continue to publish with you as Maximum Press or whatever you want and seamlessly transition you. because Image was really had a hard on for me at the time and was trying to shut me down. And my wife's like, why are you so happy? I'm like, I'm free. I just get to do my own shit now. Because honestly, Image Comics, love it. Love what we did, but I was not built to be part of some consortium. What was important to me in Image Comics was getting my concepts, characters published, creating my library. I'm so proud of everything with Image. And obviously, as you guys know, and I've been back doing books with Image. It's still the best deal in town, in my opinion. I love all those guys there. But at that point in time, it was ready. I was time to go. And I was excited. And it was new and it was exciting. But Awesome was sad. It was very sad. And it was a complete failure for me. It was, in my opinion, it's really the only blemish in my career that I really go, that just did not end the way I wanted it to end. But Alan Moore, I had to say no. And given the scrutiny that I was given, I would have looked like the sucker of all time, and those books would not have sold. It would have been like the retailers would have looked at it the way I looked at it. Alan Moore has left the building. How much would I have had to work? No. This is the guy that taught Alan everything he knows. No, come on, guys. And he mows Alan's lawn. He mows Alan's lawn too, man. And he makes a killer drink. So it was the first time I was like, I'm being shystered. He's a con man. He's conning me. But here's my thing about Alan. I knew then I thought of grace with Alan, but we never had a conflict. All he could do was kind of maybe throw side shade at me. But I was, he had a hard on for DC for 20 years. But again, it was all about, I hate to break it to you, Alan's genius. And I think he's still a genius, but getting paid was priority number one. And I think he liked that big fat money he was getting. $20,000 a week, guys, in 1997 is a lot of scratch. Okay. That is a lot of scratch in the comic books industry. And who knows what else he's doing. I must end with this. There was a period at Awesome where he didn't answer the phone for about 2 weeks and we didn't know what happened to him. And Eric Stevenson was like, I'm concerned about Alan. I don't know what happened to him. And here it comes, drum roll. I was on the call with Eric where we're like, Alan, are you okay? We were worried about you. I was away and I was in a trance and I was in the magic room. And when I'm in the magic room, I can't be disturbed. And it was great. I saw Gandhi and Jesus while I was there. And I was like, oh shit. Alan Moore has been hanging with Gandhi and Jesus. And he just told us through the phone. And Eric Stevenson will 100% back that up. We were there. And as far as I'm concerned, maybe Alan was at home smoking some doobies and kicking up on the couch going, I'm going to tell these California assholes where I've been. I've been in the magic room, okay, hanging with Jesus and Gandhi. But I'm the whole thing is there's some, here's my honest opinion. The talent is severe, but the cult of Alan Moore is Andy Kaufman. I believe he very much has an Andy Kaufman side where he likes to put this persona of, I'm Alan Moore, the wizard. I met him. It's the only time he doesn't know this, but in 1985 at San Diego Comic-Con, he's there in his wife beater and his jeans, and he's barefoot on the floor. He looks like Jesus with his long mangy hair. And Jerry Ordway said, you want to meet Alan Moore? And of course, everybody wanted to meet Alan Moore. He was the guy. And he was like, oh, how you doing? Yeah. I mean, he was the counterculture, badass, brilliant, genius comic book guy. So I interacted with him as a budding comic book professional through Jerry Ordway, the Superman artist at the time. And Alan was very cool, down to earth. But then I get to the, Tarantino blows me away. I'm in the blood crypts. I'm in the magic room, Gandhi and Jesus. And you're like, shit, look, those aren't conversations I've had with anybody else in my life, right? Okay, that's only from him. But part of me is there's a little bit of the shtick because when Wildstorm gets bought by DC, he's suddenly okay with it. Well, okay, there's a firewall. And I think everyone was like, firewall? Who do you think's paying you now? DC Comics is paying you. So you've now I'll never cross this line. And unfortunately, his career ended with a bunch of lines. I'll never cross this line. Oh, shit, cross that one. I'll never cross. Oh, shit, cross that one. I'll never. And apparently, I think he hates every company. They all did him wrong. And at some point you go, really? Did they all do you wrong, Alan? Did they? Or maybe you're just fucking the most difficult dude ever. You're a genius, but shit, if that's a lot of bridges to burn. And what I do know is for years, Marvel held out in the early Bill Jemas era. that they would get Alan to do Fantastic Four. And I'm telling you, I feel like I wish we had gotten Alan Moore's Fantastic Four, right? Because again, dude, right here are all my Alan Moore books. Right here, I can reach up and grab all my Absolute Watchmen, my Swamp Thing. What? Come on, what's the one with the England? I'm
V for
blanking.
Vendetta.
Thank you, V for Vendetta. It's blocked by statues, but I've got all these books. Okay, and I even bought that porn. Didn't he do a book where everyone's having sex with animals?
Lost Girls.
Like I have that too. Like really, that's like I'll go away from the kids, like because I think they'll go like, Dad, what shit are you into? What is? Because I remember going, oh wow, and now also I think that was his girlfriend or his wife, and another thing is he really wanted her to draw more, and I didn't feel like the superhero books were where she shined. Those were editorial calls that I made, right? But bottom line, I'm glad you brought him up. Look, man, he did award-winning. So I'll be a hater. I'll put a hater hat on. Man, the only time Extreme ever won awards was with Alan Moore. Correct. 100%. Guy's a genius. We are so fortunate that he swam in our pool. Okay. And when it was over, and it's a great period. Everything he did is wonderful. And look, man, he did a lot of great stuff for us. It was all work for hire. He signed every single work for hire voucher. Those Judgment Day characters are 100% ours. And are we maybe doing something with those in the future? Yes. Do I expect him to cast a spell across the pond towards me or try and make a dummy doll and pin me? Good luck with that. I don't buy it. Like I said, there's some shtick there. There's some, oh, I'm an evil wizard, when it's really like, oh, I'm just a burnout and fuck everybody. So
I love this fucking channel, dude.
Yeah.
I love that this channel affords us opportunities like this, Rob. Can we bring up a couple other names and get some feedback? Because we're talking with Rob Liefeld. This is an architect of our freaking young, formative, budding cartoonist chops, man. I'll let you ask the heavy hitter one, but Rob, can you tell us about Chap Yap a little bit, how you discovered him and thought highly enough of him to give him a second, the second Youngblood book?
Chap had brought his samples to WonderCon. And look, man, he's great. He showed up with samples at WonderCon that are, you're hired. I mean, look, man, I knew how to develop talent. And here's the deal. Much like I just did a bit about Neil Adams on my podcast that'll be coming out maybe tomorrow or the next day. Continuity Studios, I wasn't at that level because no one's at Neil Adams' level. When Neil drew Superman, everyone else was playing for second place. When Neil drew Batman, that's the level of A-list elite talent he was. But out of his studio came Joseph Rubinstein, Terry Austin, Dick Giordano, Bob Layton, Bob McLeod. To anyone of my era, that is a murderer's row of finishers. They could all pencil. They're all good artists, but they were paired with a bunch of pencilers, elevated everybody's game. When John Byrne needed to be elevated, Joe Rubinstein was there on Captain America. George Perez, these guys inked everybody. Mike Nasser, Rich Buckler, a generation was elevated by the inkers and the embellishers that came out of Neil's studio. What I was putting together with Extreme, with myself, the ink line is powerful. Before the computer color took over, and look, man, Ed, both you guys, Jim, I study your line work. I see how much you pour those ink lines onto your work, and now with the grayscale and all the, I don't know if it's digital Zipatone, if it's Zipatone, whatever you're adding. Look, man, Klaus Janson, all these guys. So I was trying to put together that kind of system at Extreme that I could take a young penciler and put down a finished line over him and elevate him. And I did that with Frege. I did that with Marat. I did that with Chap. But Chap was the most fully formed. Came in with a dynamic style. What he needed was some storytelling tweaking. We gave him Youngblood Yearbook. That was his launch. Some pinups in Youngblood Yearbook. He delivered. And again, this is a time where the industry was open to new and fresh talent. So where Chap started on that annual to where he finished up, sometimes guys grow in 30 pages what other guys do in 6 months. And Chap was just that adept. And that would be Chap's entire, that's his entire kind of career path is he would exceed your expectations. And I remember when we asked him to do the ads for Team Youngwood, 4 different character spotlight ads. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how talented this guy is and dedicated. And he was not afraid to put the time in, because like I said, there are some artists who just don't want to put the time in. They don't want to invest the effort into advancing themselves and to doing monthly work. Chap was up for all of it. That was his dream. He bought in. Look, Chap draws War Child, right? And those pages, this is several years later, I'm like, every page he's bringing me is exceeding what I believed those pages would look like. He didn't have a weakness. Strong figure work, great faces. But again, that's what I tell people. Your favorite job is not your artist's first job. Okay. And generally, no first issue of any comic is anybody's first favorite issue of that comic. My favorite issue of X-Men is not number 1. My favorite issue of Fantastic Four is not number 1. Spider-Man number 1. You got to get deep into those runs when people start feeling their grooves. But Chap showed up, and in those sample pages, I saw, oh man, there's a guy here that can really make his mark. And we were great. Chap became a fixture at the studio, and I think was an inspiration to a bunch of guys. Jeff Matsuda would mail me his samples from Chicago in a envelope as big as my computer, hot pink. It stood out from the crowd. He is the smartest guy that's ever submitted. Yes, as orange as this is, his envelope was pink. Okay. And this giant, and it came to me and I opened it up, and 11 by 17 Xeroxes. He had a Captain America sample story, an X-Men sample story, and he had drawn some of my characters. He had his number. I called him up. I hired him through the phone right then. He couldn't believe it. I said, I will fly you out from Chicago to Southern California, to Orange County. You'll hang out. You'll check it out. You'll tell me if you want to relocate here. I don't know if you guys are aware of the Extreme House. Maybe Dan took you there. It's a house in Orange that I bought for 2 years to house all the young guys. So Ed, if you came to work for me, I had a room in the Extreme House waiting for you, which had a nice backyard in a Tony part of Orange County, which was 5 minutes from the studio, and it was yours. I visited there twice. One time the guys threw a block party that my wife and I couldn't get to, so we just turned around because the cul-de-sac was full of like 30 cars. I'm like, oh man, the guys are having a good time. Well, they don't need to see us. We'll just turn around and get out of there. But and Chap lived at that house. Jeff lived at that house. Marat lived at that house. Dan Fraga lived at that house. Chuck Jones lived at that house. I mean, it was a great, I wanted to give people the very best experience they could, especially if I'm taking you out of your backyard. If I'm asking you to come to Chicago and leave your family behind, your mom, your dad, all you know, I want to make it the best possible situation. Now, again, Jeff Matsuda was one of those guys. I paid him $400 a page. That dude did three pages a day. He did Youngblood Strike File number 5, I think is Jeff's first work. He did it in 5 days. And we were like, oh my gosh, give him more work. Because again, now the reason I'm bringing Jeff up, Jeff comes out, meets Chap. They become the very best friends. That is a friendship that happened through Extreme. And they are, so check this out. My boys played travel ball, and I watched Jeff's kids who are younger than mine play some travel ball. And we all get together and have this Extreme signing a couple years ago at a local store here, get everybody back together. Jeff and Chap bring all their kids who are all basketball players. Jeff's their coach, Chap's their coach. And I go, and they still live in Southern California. They're still best friends. Their families are best friends. They're still obviously uber talented guys that hopefully have good thoughts of Rob Liefeld, because that's all that matters to me. They gave me some tremendous work, helped build my catalog. And those are some of the best times. But Ed, Chap and Jeff became like, I mean, literally they're going to die best friends. And they met through the studio. There are people who got married that met themselves through the studio. So that studio has just some of the very best memories, even with some of the bullshit that I had to put up with. But part of it was because I was a kid leading kids, and you don't want to be a kid leading kids. I recognized in the time, like, if only I was 15 years older, this would be a lot easier. But they look at me and I am them. I'm a kid, right? So it's hard because sometimes you go, F you, man, you're just a kid. And I'm like, well, F you, you're just a kid. But I'm the boss. It's my money, right? So like and I'll make it as good as possible. But holding, as Extreme got to 60 people on site, that became almost overwhelming, because I think it's kind of be careful what you wish for. But I'm glad over the years, I've gotten great letters, emails from guys who passed through Extreme with some great affection and reached out to me and shared it to me. I'm going to tell you, man, I got verklempt. I got emotional, because I'm just glad that they saw that for what it was, because I tried to make this uber paradise comic book studio, but some people brought their own demons in and they never left. Okay. And that, we weren't we didn't have a room with exorcisms. Okay. It was just for comic books. So if you had demons, like, we tried to beat them out of you, but holy crap, some of them left with them. Some of them brought them in, left with them. Some of them grew up, matured. But ultimately, I used Chap to expand on the whole studio. But Chap, look, man, I can remember like it was yesterday. His samples, boom, done. You're in. Todd Knock, totally different situation. His samples were brought home to me. I think Dan Frege delivered an ash can that Todd Knock had drawn. And I looked at it and I said, hired, let's get him. Again, relocation, the relocation funds, fly him out, set him up. And okay, the reason I told you the Jeff Matsuda thing, he made so much money within a month. He bought his own place and a car. And he's like, Rob, I just want to let you know I'm moving out of the house. I said, is there a problem? He goes, no, I just got my own condo. And I'm like, you've only been here 5 weeks. He's like, yeah, but you pay great. And I was able to make this work. And I'm like, wow. Again, dude, hustlers. Some of these guys, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Jeff came and didn't kick his feet up. He came, he was hungry. He produced work. He was, an extraordinary talent. And we all benefited from being under the same roof,
Shouts to Extreme Studios, Catella Ave, man. Whenever I went out there to WonderCon, I was digging in the crates, man, with Jaime Hernandez, Love and Rockets cartoonist, and he said something about like, yeah, whenever I come near the con, I see Catella Ave on the signs, and it makes me think of Disneyland. And I was like, well, I saw Catella Ave, and it made me think of motherfucking Extreme Studios.
That's right, baby. I love it. I love it, Ed. Thank you so much.
Hey, one more name to bring up before we wrap up here. Stephen Platt. Any exciting stories about Stephen Platt art? Is that stuff started coming in?
So, I love this.
Pretty exciting to us.
And you know what? The urban legend is, and you could
Sure.
put the thumbs up, thumbs down, dispel it if it's not true, man. But was a Dodge Viper involved in the mix?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't have any knowledge of that.
Okay, because that's what people would say. They would say that you lured him to California, man, with like one of the first Vipers.
Look, I'm going to tell you, I can talk numbers. The numbers don't lie. I have the vouchers outside. I have all of Stephen Platt's work for hire. Like I said, I couldn't afford to ever let any of that stuff go. So all those files were, I've kept everything from the studio. I have 2 giant storage units that they would remind you of the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You'd be like, oh, what? It's my personal comic collection and tons of business stuff. And they're 90% comic book related material. So I'm 52. I got a lot of stuff, but there's an entire wing of that was extreme documentation, vouchers, deals. Here's the deal. Stephen Platt came on the scene. I really liked his Moon Knights. I wanted to get him to come out and do Prophet because Dan Panosian, God bless him, beautiful man, amazing talent, had informed me that he was not feeling it on Prophet after like issue 3, and that he wanted to pivot away and do something else. And what we need to do is address this, because it was a constant murmuring, I think, in all the studios. I wasn't in Wildstorm, I wasn't in Top Cow, but I do remember having a conversation with Jim Lee where he mentioned by name Brett Booth, and I name checked him with Dan Frege. He said, these guys, they do one comic. I think Brett Booth had done a Wildcats 0 or a spinoff or a one-off. And Jim says, I've already gotten a bunch of flyers and I see all these ads. They're doing like 10 comic stores. They're like, and they've only done 22 pages. And they're like, they're marketing themselves like they've done years worth of work. And I suddenly saw, circulating where Norm Ratman and Danny Mickey were going on an Inkers tour, You guys, Inkers did not do tours in that day, but they did, and it was successful. So good on them. Good on them that they saw the market for what it was. But the bottom, what I'm getting to is, and Jim said, and then they're disappointed if the one book doesn't come out and they haven't been hailed as the next superstar. And this is the wizard disease, okay? My career, I've already sold 5 million copies. I've already transformed New Mutants before Wizard decides to pat me on the back and go, well done, Rob, okay? They would then try and control all of us at Image. And Wizard would see us all as stocks and bonds. A stock to go up, a stock to drop. If you cross them, they drop you. If they liked you, they elevated you. If you paid enough money for enough ads, they'd elevate you. I mean, there was a lot of, that is absolute 100% how the system was being run, and all the wink, wink, nods that we'd get from their marketing people that would fly out and try us to get to buy more ads, and we'll give you more coverage and we'll elevate your guys. And it was a distasteful part of the business. I regret even being on that treadmill because, like I said, I built my career prior to, Gareb Shamus and the Shamus family's Wizard magazine kind of coming in and dictating the market. And look, this ends up with, in 1999, Gareb on the phone with me saying, I'm outselling every comic book. I'm the most important comic book in the marketplace. Wizard does better than X. He was right. He had moved that magazine to the #1 comic related anything. So, mission accomplished. Couldn't have been happier to see them go out of business as a magazine. I don't think they were doing anything to help the business at the time. But going back to 92, 93, 94, this is when everybody was like, I got to be hot. I got to be hot. Why is Wizard saying I'm the most special thing ever? And you guys, I should have had, I don't know if you guys watch the show Billions on Showtime, but there is a dedicated counselor to all the rich day traders when they're having a bad day. She's a lead character, and everyone's going in and she's like, you get out there and you trade like the MFer that you are. I needed that at Extreme when they weren't hot as they wanted to be in September or October. And what happened is they needed to pivot off these books. Well, this book isn't in 3 issues. This book hasn't launched me, so I have to go somewhere else. And I never said no. I wish to God Dan Frege had done a year on Bloodstrike. I wish to God he would have drawn over Keith Giffen's layouts and done those stories because they were brilliant. They would have been elevated had Dan done them. But he wanted to go somewhere else. Dan Panosian wanted to get off Prophet. Everybody wanted to get off after 3 or 4 issues because they felt like, well, if the heat hasn't touched me, I got to go chase it somewhere else. I get Stephen Platt on the phone, decide to bring him in. We can use some outside juice. This guy's got a wicked style. I size him up in a conversation. I just say, hey, I'd like to have you. And look, between you, me, and the lamppost, I just wanted to cut through the bullshit. I said, you pencil and ink in your own work? Yes. I know that probably the most he's getting paid is $4,000, $5,000 an issue at that point, right? I said, I'll give you $40,000 an issue to come do Extreme and take over Prophet. That's for pencils and inks. 40,000 finished pencils, finished inks. He was stammered. Like, I'm like, no. That's the offer on the table right now. 40 grand. I'll fly you out. I'll pull you up, and for a finished job. So look, I made the deal. He came. We benefited. Prophet got even bigger, blew up. I decided to get a variant cover for him on Prophet 4 to tease him coming. No one saw that comic skyrocketing. Steven comes on Prophet and the sales go up almost 150,000, like giant. And I think everybody was shocked because other than my adoration for Moon Knight, I don't think he was somebody that Mark Silvestri or Jim Lee had thought of kind of recruiting, because you're recruiting talent. It's like you're building your team. Steven gets there. I have revisited his work in the last few weeks, obviously rereading all the Prophets as the movie gets going, working with the screenwriter. And dude, they're better than they were then. Steven's Prophet run was, we're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, and then the first of the new issue. And my buddy called me up and said, Rob, have you read War Games like Prophet 9 or Prophet 8? And I'm like, yeah, I've got it right here. He goes, don't take this the wrong way, man, but that's the best comic you ever published. And I'm like, dude, I'm not going to argue with you. Stephen was wicked talented. But the Stephen Platt of that time was short-lived. And if you get, there's a art of book by George Perez, Fantagraphics published. It's called Focus on George Perez. I dug my copy out yesterday. This is fresh. I sat on my beanbag. I read the foreword. The foreword from the guy at Fantagraphics said, you would never know George Perez as the insecure artist he professes to be. Okay? I think we're all insecure with our art. Stephen never truly liked what he put down. It haunted him. He hated it. Getting Prophet 5 out of him, which is a masterful piece of work. You guys, I mean, it's amazing. Robert Kirkman has some of the pages of Stephen's extreme work. And I go to his house and I go, hey, let's pull out that stuff and let's look at it over. I remember it being handed to me to submit, to turn in. I wrote the books. I wrote all those Prophet. He was drawing my stories. And I think he was amazing. Jim Lee was discussing his work with me like Prophet 6, because Jim likes to break everybody down to a formula that he can understand. He goes, well, I'll tell you, you know that game Double Dragon, those little video game characters, they're really stout and they're bulging with muscles. That's what Stephen's work looks like to me. And he was the first one to break that down to me, because I would see Stephen as a combination of myself, Jim, and Todd. I saw bits of all of us in there. And then Stephen started chasing. He wanted to look like Jim Lee. He wanted to look like Aaron Weisenfeld, who was doing Team 7. And slowly, the Stephen that we all loved was disappearing as he transformed himself into these other artists. And look, he still had a wicked storytelling eye. That was his own original approach. And I had a long talk with Mike Zeck as I broke in, and people don't really understand, because Mike said to me, he said, Rob, storytelling is the most important part. People get hung up on the drawings inside the frames, but your storytelling is what takes the eye through the page. And why, and I quote, in the story, because he's got a little bit of a draw on the storytelling, Rob. The storytelling, Rob, is when you close that book, and it's the difference between why you like it more than maybe that other comic. And the fans don't always understand that it's the subtlety of the page design and the storytelling. And Stephen had his own unique way of telling a story. Stephen would grow to resent, I think, that the heat left him because he didn't deliver the product. We had to keep pushing back the books. I saw in one of the prophets, it says, we're sorry that the next issue will be late due to Stephen Platt. I guess I was like, I'm throwing your ass under the bus. If I'm paying you $40,000 and you can't show up and deliver, then I'm going to kind of try and incite you. And, maybe my Phil Jackson, impression wasn't terribly good. Maybe I should have adopted more of a Dennis Rodman. No, go party in Vegas. It's good. I was there when that all happened in real time. So revisiting it on The Last Dance was so rich. I'm so glad my kids got to see that. But with Stephen, then he had ideas that he wanted to pursue, and we indulged him. The Prophet with Chuck Dixon is more of a Stephen Platt indulgent run, the time travel, the different, all of that, indulging. And look, I did right by Stephen. I understand he dislikes me a great deal, and it breaks my heart that I know he doesn't sign Prophet comics for the fans. They've told me this, which it's been publicly posted on like Facebook, and I don't know where it turned dark for him. And yeah, like I just go, I'm proud of the work we did together. I stand by that I delivered. I was a good employer. I paid up front. I paid great rates. I gave you a platform to do whatever the hell you want. Again, that Bloodstrike War Games issue, double pager after we pretty much everybody had a green light at Extreme, because Bob Harris on the New Mutants and X-Force just said, do whatever you want. Yeah, good. That's cleared. I got clearances to just run with it. And what happened was a sales explosion, was success. So I tried not to get in these guys' ways. I tried to let them do what they do. And unfortunately with Steven, a lot of resentment. And like I said, later, I would look at Soul Saga, which is some people's favorite work of his, but I would see he's trying to now be Joe Mad and Battle Chasers. And I'm like, my whole thing is, dude, when you were Stephen Platt, you shook the earth. Like we freaking, oh my gosh, you were an earthquake. But it felt like, and now I see some of his work. I don't see any Stephen that I made that deal on the phone, please, based on this Moon Knight, come and throw your magic down. And the only negative is there was a couple guys at Extreme that told me at our recent gatherings that Stephen would often come into the studio and put everybody down and tell everybody how good they were not. And that was hard. That was hard to manage. And there were some definite, I would say, hurt feelings. And, Stephen was also, I bought extra office in the building and put him away from everybody so that he could, because I treated him kind of like a mad scientist. He needed his own lab to cook up his brand of meth. Okay. So I'm like, here is all that you need. Just everybody doesn't like those fumes, but I dig them, but do them over here. And Dan Frago was in that wing too. He asked to be moved to that wing. And so my thing with Stephen is a bit of a tortured artist. Wish he produced more work, not just for me, for anybody. Mad respect for every line that he put down on the page for me. Nothing but love. We delivered, and I'm proud of all the work we did together. I am so excited. But like Crypt is in the first issue of Prophet that I wrote and Dan Panosian drew, Prophet meets his evil twin, his evil version from the future, which is kind of the foreshadowing that this is what he's going to battle. An echo of that is Crypt, but Stephen designed Crypt, named Crypt, and so I don't touch Crypt. Crypt doesn't exist to me. I don't want any problems with Stephen, so I won't touch that. There are certain roads I go, I don't drive down that road anymore. That's a dangerous road. So Crypt has been left on the side because we can't. So when I talk to people about Prophet, I go, but this isn't available. This is not mine. I can't introduce this into the mix. And that's it. But no, I mean, look, if anybody wants to seek out those comics, and look, even the Soul Sagas, even though they were very much inspired by Joe Mad, they're beautiful comics. They're really, I mean, Stephen is obviously very talented. As again, so many of these guys went into television work. And I'm gonna and just so your viewers know this, for a period of time, J.J. Abrams, yes, I'm name dropping, calls me. It's the second season of Alias. He had been asked to write a movie based on one of my concepts. He had passed, but then he asked me if I would do a comic book adaptation of Alias. Now, Andy Park can confirm to you, Andy was the guy I tapped, and Andy did an entire 25-page J.J. Abrams wrote Alias comic book. It's gorgeous. JJ had some people advising him. I remember one time I'm armed with this Travis Charest level Andy Park looking badass art. I mean, I'm so impressed. Andy's like almost painting it. And the guy that is underneath JJ says, well, we were really hoping it would look like this. And they handed me Danger Girl by Campbell. And I'm like, well, but you've been getting these pages for months and we didn't sign on to do that. And it's just kind of Hollywood wires crossed. And when they reneged on the Alias license, I figured they were taking it to Dark Horse or somewhere else. But they literally said, no, JJ doesn't want to do a comic anymore. It's not what he thought. And to their credit, there was no more Alias comic. We were the one kind of lab, that they tested in, and whatever frustrations came through, because I was literally just a conduit. JJ wrote the Alias comic. Andy Park illustrated. Andy has shared some of those pages on social media. You can see them. Reason I'm doing this is when I'm on the set of Alias, one time I was there a couple times during season 2, and they go, oh, here's the storyboard guy for Alias. And I go, hey, how you doing? And, he's got a pile of his storyboards. And guys, my buddies, Jim and Ed, this is a step above stick figure, okay? A step up. They hand me these, and I go, oh. And in my head, I'm like, holy shit, they pay this guy? Like, that's what I'm thinking. This is like 2001, 2002. I'm like, this guy's getting paid top Hollywood dollar to do stick figures. Storyboard this. You got it, boss. And I'm like, what? No likenesses, no even built out. Dude, these are bad storyboards. I don't know who this cat was. I don't know how many storyboard artists there were. This one guy I encountered with these storyboards, but you guys got to understand, was he probably making $100,000 a year in 2002 to do stick figures all day long? Yes. So when some of these guys go into storyboard and character design, that's big fat money, and nobody gets to tell you that that ink line was a little off, or you don't have to be faced with the fact that that face wasn't exactly, how you did, or what I started hours ago by the eyes, one eye's drooping lower than the other. Liefeld, fucking fix those eyes, right? So I never curse, and I cursed on your show so many times today. So anyway, the thing is, the thing is that the bottom line is, some of these guys segued to businesses where, look, like I said, what does Steven have a great storytelling eye for? He's a great storyteller. He's a great storyboarder. So, on the flip side, when Dan Frege got into storyboards and he showed them to me, I'm like, nobody's ever seen storyboards this detailed. Like, and Dan knew that he could do that faster than something about being printed, removed the pressure from him. And his storyboards for like this Allen Iverson, like sneaker ad that he showed me, I was like, this would be one of the best comics you ever published. But the onus has been lifted from you. This detail is insane. And of course, every director's tripping over themselves to get to you, and Dan knew it, like, I'm wowing the masses because his competition is stick figure guy on Alias going, yeah, I can give you the best damn stick figures you ever saw. I'll do this stick figure with a purple marker. Woo! And you're like, this is garbage. And you get, like, I really wanted to pat the guy in the back and go, dude, this is your Shangri-La. Hope this never dries up for you, man, because this is. And again, but like I said, can these guys provide for large families, buy homes, get big mortgages, doing storyboards for Hollywood? Yes, there's big money in that. And that's why so many, and even in my day, guys like Rick Hoberg and Chuck Patton, who both were DC, Justice League, All-Star Squadron, Justice Society artists, they segued into cartoons. Because, guys, the pressure's it's just different, and you can do more with less. And so it doesn't surprise me that so many guys who maybe liked the salaries they were given found that, like, when Jeff Matsuda went to Marvel, maybe Marvel didn't pay extreme rates. And so his only pivot after that is, hey, man, I'm going to go storyboard Batman and kick ass and be a director and win awards. I mean, Chap and Jeff have both, they got awards, okay, for their work. So I'm really proud of where all these guys went. And again, a guy like Andy Park, holy shit. Like, oh, didn't know you would be the next Drew Struzan when you walked through my door in 1996, but wow, like, super proud. Andy is making art, and that is where he is making his mark in the world, and, good for him. So I'm going to be quiet and you're going to talk.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is just how comics kind of makes you like a power illustrator without even knowing it. It's like, you do freelance work outside of comics, ad art or whatever. You're tasked with like a single image, and a page of comics, it's, it could be a dozen different images on one page. Like, Of course you're gonna rock the house, man. But Jimmy, you got a good closer, I think.
Yeah, Rob, you've mentioned basketball a couple of times in this conversation. You're in LA. You mentioned Magic Johnson. We lost Kobe Bryant earlier this year. I wonder if you had any reflection on that, if you had ever met Kobe, or any thoughts on it.
So everyone who knows me in my life will know that the only guy who I've ever stood in restaurants and parking lots and basically gotten into fistfights over is Kobe. I loved him like I've never loved any entertainer, athlete, and my kids will tell you this, my wife will tell you this. In my house, I have no less than 3 Kobe Bryant paintings that I have purchased and displayed, and a couple of them are signed. And the thing with Kobe that I drew a ton of, look, I loved him because I never thought we would get a player on the Lakers, which is I'm born and raised in Southern California. The Lakers are my jam, right? Magic, Showtime. And I thought, we're never going to revisit this. Then the Lakers trade for Shaq, and we get this kid, Kobe came to the public's consciousness because he went to the prom with frickin' Brandy. Okay, she was a TV star and a music star, and he was making all the waves as young athlete from Philadelphia going to the prom with Hollywood's Brandy. Okay, this is how he hit the mark. Okay, before he was even drafted, high school basketball player. He comes to the Lakers. He moves and competes like no one I've ever seen, including Magic Johnson. And I buy into him hook, line, and sinker. Does he make some mistakes? Does he make some enemies? Does he speak his mind? Is he brash? Yes, he feels like me. When he and Shaq had their falling out, I told everybody that's Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld having a falling out, because Todd used to refer to me as little brother, little brother, little brother, little buddy, little buddy, little buddy. And I would hear Shaq say, "Oh, the little fella, little brother, little brother." There's a time and a place for that. And when your little brother is scoring more points than you, maybe deserves maybe a little more respect at that point in time. And again, this is early in Shaq and Kobe. And look, we're all super competitive, right? And in our businesses, I'm super competitive. Todd's super competitive. Michael Jordan was super competitive. I think you guys have seen in this interview, I like to dunk on people. I like when people tell me I can't, do something. And then I go, okay, now that it's done, what are you going to say? Oh, you're looking the other way. Oh, wait, you're running away from me now. Wait, love it. Competition drives me. It gets me up in the morning. I love the slights. And so did Kobe. That summer, I went to a Shaq charity game in Santa Monica, and all of the LA beat writers were standing in line waiting to interview Shaq in his trailer. And I wandered up to two of my favorite sports writers. One became a ESPN personality named Jay Adonde. And I said, "Hey, what do you think's going on?" And it's like, "Well, Shaq's not too happy about this. Shaq's not this." And I'm like, Shaq doesn't win these championships. Like, Kobe is a huge factor, but the sports writers, they were in Shaq's camp. Kobe was the problem. When Shaq leaves and condemns Kobe and basically says he's never going to win another championship again, I'm like, you asshole. That's not going to happen. And I retweeted just yesterday was the anniversary. Kobe wins his 5th. And the first thing he says with his daughters on his lap is like, "I have one more ring than Shaq." That's all that matters. It's like it drove him. 5 beats 4. Okay. Because nobody thought Allen Iverson, Vince Carter, all these other players after Kobe left, Shaq left Kobe, they were on record saying, "Well, I would have won those 3 championships with Kobe." No, you wouldn't. I watched every one of those games. I never missed them. You didn't have the fire in you. And Shaq would dominate weak centers in the Eastern Conference Finals. He did not beat Hall of Fame centers. You know who the center he beat for Indiana was? No, you don't. His name's Detlef Schrempf. Detlef Schrempf. Google Detlef. See what happened to him. Is he in the Hall of Fame? No, but Shaq dunked all over him in the finals. But to get to the finals, the San Antonio Spurs had Tim Duncan and David Robinson, the Twin Towers. They existed to bottle up Shaq and make his life hell. And the coach of the Spurs was on record as, "Well, we could always handle Shaq, but we had no answer for Kobe." They don't get to the finals for Shaq to dunk all over Detlef Schrempf, okay? And one of the Collins brothers in New Jersey in that three-peat. They don't get there unless Kobe defies the odds and goes over, around, and through the Spurs. Here's the end of the answer. He is up for an Oscar for that Glenn Keane, Dear Basketball short. Well, because of my lovely buddy here who hasn't made an appearance yet, my good friend Deadpool, because of Deadpool, my wife and I are invited to the Vanity Fair party that year, 2018. And I'm at the Vanity Fair party, which is the big Hollywood. I mean, my wife and I are like, we can't even believe we're here. What the hell are we doing here? We're Orange County comic book people, but we're having a good time. And Kobe Bryant walks in with his Oscar and his beautiful wife, Vanessa, who is from Orange County. Again, you live here. She went to Huntington Beach High. She grew up in Orange County. Kobe lives in Orange County his entire career. He takes helicopters and motorcycles up to LA. And I said, I'm going for it, because I forgot this giant element. I forgot this. In 2014, my oldest son says, "Dad, Kobe Bryant follows you on Twitter." And I said, "Get the hell out of here." Literally, like, get the hell out of here. I checked yesterday. He followed me through his life. He never unfollowed me, which was like, what? I remember that day I took my sons out for burgers And they're like, Dad, what are you doing? And I'm like, I didn't want to say, I just keep refreshing to see if this is a joke, but Kobe Bryant really follows me. Like, and you guys, like that's a big deal, right? In social media. And so I walk up to him at the Vanity Fair party and I said, hey, Kobe, can I just ask you something? Can I just cut to the quick? He's like, hey, yeah, man, how you doing? Could not have been more friendly. And I'm in love with the guy. He's in another life, I married Kobe Bryant. But the thing is, and my wife knows this, and she loves Kobe too. We all love Kobe. I walk up to him, I said, Kobe, can I ask you, do you manage your own social media? Because come on, right? You always hear about people have other handles and maybe somebody, and he's like, yeah, man, yeah. That's me on Twitter and Instagram. I said, Kobe, I'm Rob Liefeld, and you follow me. He's like, hell yeah, man, what's up, Deadpool? And I go, what the fuck? Dude, I had to keep my composure. I'm like, okay, yeah, well, it's so great to meet you. Oh, yeah. And he's like, Ryan Reynolds, he called me, man, after Deadpool 2. I guess he had some nagging injuries. I hooked him up with some great therapists, and I hooked him up with some great guys that could work those injuries out for him and give him some sports therapy. It worked out for him. I think he's doing good. And I'm like, yeah, thanks, Kobe. And I said, Kobe, I just want to tell you something. You're my favorite athlete entertainer of my entire life. You have brought more happiness to me in my life than anything outside of my wife and my family. I lived on every shot you ever made. You competed at the highest level. You never let anything get you down. You inspired me, man. As a cartoonist, there were days I woke up and I did not want to face the odds, but I'm like, I can do this. Kobe Bryant did this. He battled the media. He battled the opposition. He battled the slights. And he's like, thanks, man. That means a lot. Thank you. And I said, would you mind a photo? Could I get a photo? He's like, sure, dude, let's get a photo. And so I have a photo. So when you say that I meet him, I got to tell you, man, that photo has been on my mantle in my living room with me, Kobe, and his Oscar. And his wife could not have been more delightful and wonderful and kind. And look, man, here's what you got to know. I've been fortunate to work with and meet and hang out and be creative with Tom Cruise and Steven Spielberg and Will Smith and some of the biggest names in entertainment. They were down to earth, sweet, generous people. And then there are directors that have had one hit and they want to do a movie, and you go meet with them and they are the biggest assholes you've ever possibly. You're like, oh my gosh. So you're the guy who's affected. I can go meet Steven Spielberg, who is like my sweet uncle, treats me with kindness. And this is the most important director in the history of Hollywood, is super kind to me. And this guy, this one director who has one movie, treats me like, acts like he is the shit of all time. And you're like, that's just sad. You're affected. You're an affected person. And so you never know what you're going to meet, right? And Kobe could have been, he's got his Oscar. He's won an Academy Award, right? He's at the Vanity Fair party and being celebrated. To get to me, I'm telling you, I can't remember all the people who poured over him. But not to get to me, to get to the area that I was in where he was, I think, going to relax. And then he's got this cartoonist coming up going, can I slather all over you? Can I drool on you? But Jim, it was the honor of my life to meet him. So here's the deal. I am at a comic convention the day he dies. Once a year in Orange County, there is a convention. It is a big celebrated event. I am walking into the convention and my son is in Texas and he says, Dad, is it true? Is it true? Dad, Kobe Bryant died. And I swear to you, Jim, I said, wait, no, give me a break. And then a guy I work with walked right into he arrived at the same time I did. It's like, and he goes, Rob, did you hear Kobe died? And I said, no, I refused, no. And this is a day everybody in Orange County, it's Orange County's only dedicated comic convention. Drove home, bawled the whole time, sat on my couch and cried for, I think, 2 days. I love that guy. He is, and you're like, Rob, man, you're really into your basketball. You know what? You just take journeys with people. Athletes, they lift us to another place. This guy battled every bit of adversity. He was told by the NBA, you were just riding shotgun with Shaq. He carried you. And I'll just end with this. His last 3 finals, he took Lamar Odom, who'd never been out of the first round, Ron Artest, who'd never been out of the first round, and Pau Gasol, who'd never been out of the first round, okay? He took them to back-to-back championships. They didn't take him, okay? This whole idea that Kobe needed to be taken. No. Pau Gasol left Memphis because he couldn't get out of the first round, and it was dragging on him. Lamar Odom never got out of the first round. Ron Artest never got it. Suddenly they go to round 2, round 3, round 4, the finals. The Lakers went to the finals 2008, 2009, 2010. Kobe Bryant rewrote his story, okay? And like I said, so do I identify with the guy who's been slighted and told that he doesn't matter much and everybody else carried him? And yes, I do. And he was a tremendous inspiration to me. And I am obviously super bummed. More than that he and his daughter died. That's the whole thing, right? But look, man, you know, a lot of guys, I shared that passion with a lot of other cartoonists. Everybody loved Kobe. You know, it's just 2020 is like a shit year, right? So we're gonna have to try and turn this around, but I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share that story. I literally am just so glad that I got to shake his hand, talk to him, ask him, did you really follow me on Twitter? Like, what the, like, because again, that's the little boy in me going, my favorite athlete of all time is following me. And my kid told me, my kid also told me that Deadpool was being greenlit as a movie. He ran upstairs and said, Dad, it's on Twitter. They decided to make Deadpool. I said, no, son, that's wrong. That's just those gossip sites. They have it wrong. He goes, no, Dad. And he thrust it in my face. He goes, here, 20th Century Fox set to make Deadpool. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And Marat Michaels was sitting on the couch with me. He was up in my loft with me when my son came up, and Marat's like, oh my gosh, congratulations. And so he's, again, a witness. These aren't stories I manufacture. And I was like shook, like it's happening. And it's something different when your kid tells you. But guys, I know I have droned on and on and on. And I hopefully have bared my soul. But look, man, here's the deal. I love you guys. I've met you guys. I've gone out to lunch with you guys. I've talked to you. You've made a comic book about me and honored me in a way that I can never, ever truly tell you. But that comic you did to me, dude, it's a special place in my heart. And your fans should know that before we started this, I held up Jim's Skater Girl. Tell me what's called again. It's right here.
Street Angel.
Street Angel. You know that I know the name. I just got flustered. And I showed him, like, I would rip off both your work if it wasn't so blatant and so obvious, because you're so freaking good. And you guys represent the future of this business. You're badasses. You do it yourself. I love that you did your hip hop shit and then walked into Marvel and was like, yeah, I'd like to do the X-Men too. Cool. Thanks. Okay. Yeah, I'll tell you. Good. It's going to look like this. You're going to format it like what I did at Fantagraphics Ed from Southern California. I'm like, look at that. Look at Ed strut. And then your buddy Tom's like, I'll get a piece of that. that doesn't happen without you doing that, right? I mean, you guys are kicking ass. Remind me, Jim, did my son go out to dinner with us when we were in Pittsburgh? He was with me, right?
Yes.
That's what I didn't know if he stayed at the hotel or not, because I was telling my wife again about this, because you got to understand, I had to tell everybody, be quiet while Dad talks for 3 hours today, okay? they've been upstairs really patient and really like, or being very quiet. I don't know if they've come down in the back behind me in the stairs ever, but so, because I had to say, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is what I'm doing. And this is the guys I'm doing it with. So anyway, thanks for letting me run off at the mouth.
Rob, we learned this stuff from you, and before we get out of here, one more time, let's get the plugs. Robservations, the Snake Eyes comic. Drop some science to everybody.
Look, my Robservation podcast is on it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on Podbean, or BeanPod, whatever it is. I mean, it's we're getting in on all the different formats. And look, man, it's just me pouring out my love of the comics of my youth, and we're gonna get to me breaking into comics and all of my Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and Mark Silvestri. And I've just decided I don't give a shit. I think I showed you today, I don't give a shit. I will tell the stories. I will tell the tales. It's just me bearing my soul, but it's truly comes out of a place of love. The thing that I love the most, Ed, I will tell you, is the people who have said, I am so excited to listen to your podcast, because so many comic book, not you guys, but so many comic book podcasts or YouTube shows are negative. And more power to you guys for keeping it positive, because people respond to positive. They want fun, good, uplifting. They want fun and interesting, right? Above all else. And then look, Snake Eyes is coming out in July. I hope people pick it up. I poured everything I had into it. I worked with some standby guys, Adelso Corona, my new colorist, Federico B. He is outstanding. He rocked my world. Everybody thought, look, I still work with a guy named Romulo. He's amazing. He colored Deadpool Bad Blood. But people are like, wow, Romulo's really hooking you up. I'm like, wait, that's not Romulo. That's Federico. I love working with new talent, inkers, colorists, whatever. Snake Eyes is coming out. Robservations, seek it out. It's a podcast. And just thanks for having me on, guys. This is going to be great. I can't wait to share this with the world and be embarrassed and hide from all the hate people will shout at me.
Awesome, Rob. Thanks a lot. We're going to have some links in the description below for your social media accounts and things like that, so that people can keep appraised. But thanks a lot for taking the time with us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rob, and thanks for Image Comics, man. It
Dude,
really
thank
changed.
You. You're welcome, dude. You
changed
guys,
my trajectory.
Thank you so much. It was great hanging with you guys. Let's do it again soon. There's more stories.
Sounds great.